Good morning, everyone. Just going to call this meeting into order. It's September, and it's nearly fall, and I hope that you had a wonderful summer. And now, it's true, we have a few more weeks of this enjoyable weather. It's been such a hot, warm, blistering summer. And so we're really excited to be back here at Scarborough Community Council and welcome everybody back. And there's a few new faces that we have, so I just wanted to point that out. And we have Carly Hinks here, who's will now be sitting in for John Mende, who's now retired. And Carly will be with us probably till about November, and we'll have some exciting leave at that time. And then we also have our new councillor, Jim Hart, who's now joining us and is not new, really. Jim's been a great member of the city, really the City of Toronto for years and years. So I'll let Jim just speak. We had Nathan here that came on board as well, so we'd love to hear a few words from you, Jim, Councillor Hart.
Thank you, John. This was a bit unexpected. I just want to say how great it is to be here at Scarborough Community Council. You know, I've lived in Ward 44 for 30 years, and it's just it's wonderful to be able to represent your own community and, frankly, to live and work in the best part of the City of Toronto, without question. And we have a green and beautiful area in the City of Toronto, in Ward 44 and in Scarborough as a whole, and I'm looking forward to working with my council colleagues to keep our area of the city as beautiful as it is. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Holland.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and welcome aboard. We have such a great team out here in Scarborough, so we really enjoy and look forward to working with you. So this morning there is we do have a few new items for added to business, but we'll get to those. There are several timed items beginning at 9:40. These are all for fence exemptions, requests for fence exemption. So SC 24.1, request for fence exemption 34 Horfield Avenue. SC 24.2, request for fence exemption 34 Tordale Crescent. SC 24.3, request for fence exemption 73 Asian Court Drive. SC 24.4, request for fence exemption 216 Island Road. And also timed for 10:30 is the SC 24.5 Official Plan Amendment 3655 Kingston Road, which is in Ward 36. So we have the introduction and enactment of general bills to confirm the proceedings of Community Council will be the last items. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? And seeing none, confirmation of minutes from the June 13th, 2017 meeting of Scarborough Community Council. So moved. Councillor Ainsley, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And now we will go through the agenda.
Madam Speaker, just a point of order. I have a petition that I'd want to put forward. I don't know when it would be best to do that, but if I could maybe just...
Definitely. Yeah, so actually, if you want to do that now, I think that would be the appropriate time.
Yeah, it's with regard to item SC 24.5, 3655 Kingston Road, the official plan amendment. I have a petition from residents in the area to stop the high-rise at 3655 Kingston Road. There's a total of 1,062 people, so I'd just like to give that petition.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so we've received the petition. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I'm not, again, I should know my procedures by now. I have a request to add an item on the agenda. Do I do that now or at the end after you've vetted the rest of the agenda?
Exactly. I have that here, and I'm going to put that forward right at the end with added business.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the first item is, this is a deputant, it's request for fence exemption, 34 Horfield Avenue. And then item number 2 is request for fence exemption, side and rear yards, 34 Tordale Crescent, deputants on that as well. SC 24.3, request for fence exemption pool enclosure rear yard, 73 Asian Court Drive. We have deputants on that as well. Yeah, and the other one is SC 24.4, request for fence exemption rear yard along east side lot line, 216 Island Road. We have deputants on that as well. And again, SC 24.5, 3655 Kingston Road, official plan amendment and zoning amendment final report. This one has deputants and is timed for 10:30. And SC 24.6, this is Councillor Hart's first motion, as he will be putting forward a motion on this one, which is 4342 Lawrence Avenue East, zoning amendment application preliminary report. It's a quick notice to expand.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a motion to expand notice for this application. We have a few parking issues in the ward, and I want to make sure that all ward residents near this property are aware of it. So I would appreciate it if Community Council would agree to expand notice in this regard. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? I know. And that carries. Could have had a... Is that as amended? Yeah, and that's item as amended. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 24.7, 1021 to 1035 Markham Road zoning amendment status report. Councillor DeBaremaker.
Madam Chair, I have maybe a procedural question for you and the clerk. Often because I don't know if this is considered an action item or if I'm allowed to move a motion on it today, because I'd like to move a motion to amend one of the recommendations. So would I have to defer that to the next meeting?
Yeah.
So defer this to the next meeting. Then my motion would be to defer this to the next meeting of Scarborough Community Council, so that it then becomes an action item and I can move a motion on it.
Okay, so
If my understanding is correct.
that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So you're moving that motion?
I'm moving deferral to the next meeting of Scarborough Community Council, and I don't know if I need the clause so that it becomes an action item, or does it automatically become? Automatically? Okay, great. So defer to the next meeting.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. So we'll circle that one. And SC 24.8, 85 Galloway Road, zoning application, request for direction report. Councillor Ainsley.
I'm going to move the recommendations in the report.
Okay, moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 33 Murray Avenue. Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank staff for the work on this, and also the owner, currently the trustee of the property, who is willing to have this designated, and it's a long time coming. So I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Okay, moving staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. SC 24.10, proposed name for the new city arts facility at Guild Park and Gardens. Councillor Ainsley.
I'm moving the recommendations.
Moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. SC 24.11, application to remove 2 private trees, 50 Wexford Boulevard. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Speaker. I don't know whether or not the applicant is actually here, so I wondered whether or not the applicant is here for 50 Wexford Boulevard.
Yep.
Okay, don't see the applicant, so we'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, so moving staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 24.12, application to remove a private tree, 42 Grey Point Drive. Councillor Shan.
Madam Chair, the applicant is unable to be here and wants the item deferred to the November meeting, and the staff are aware of it, so I would like to move a motion to defer it to November.
Okay, so that'll be a motion to defer to November. Council, Community Council, all those in favor, opposed, and that carries. And this one also has debutants, SC 24.13, application to remove a private tree, 86 Conference Boulevard, and this is in Councillor Hart's ward. And SC 24.14, and this is the left turn prohibition, Victoria Park Avenue and Terraview Boulevard. Councillor Kelly?
Chair, I would ask my colleagues to defer consideration of this until the next meeting of this council.
Okay, yeah, so it's October 17th. October 17th, Community Council, sure. Okay, so we're moving that, Councillor Kelly is moving it as a deferral to October 17th, Community Council meeting. All those in favor, opposed, and that carries.
Thank you.
SC 2415, traffic control signals review, Birchmont Road and Merrifield Drive. Councillor Thompson?
I'd like to hold that for now, please.
And this one, we will be looking at reopening. So this is SC 2416, reopening of Scarborough Community Council item SC 22.7, headed no standing zones, Valhalla Boulevard, and it's in Councillor Crawford's ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there's two parts to this. We have to reopen a decision we made, and then to change that decision. Very quickly, we made the decision a while back, and I had inadvertently found out afterwards that it's adversely impacting a local business on Kingston Road. So in discussions with them, the community, I'm bringing this forward. It just moves the parking restrictions down 18 meters and allows parking for this business. So that's the reason. I didn't know that when we made the decision, so it's just changing it a little bit.
Okay, and so this one requires two-thirds? So two-thirds votes to
Reopen and then to
reopen,
change.
and
Yes.
then, yeah, so all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries.
Now the item?
And, yeah, and then the item, and that's the new
Yeah.
motion. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Thank you, okay. And SC 2417, speed limit, Victoria Park Avenue, Councillor Crawford. Sorry, Councillor Crawford? Yep, sorry, yours is the next one, which is SC 2417, speed limit.
Yeah, I'll move staff recommendations.
Moving staff recommendations, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. SC 2418, compulsory stop controls, Councillor, on Tweed Crescent Avenue, Councillor Thompson.
Madam Chair, I'm just hoping that there is going to be no need for more stop signs in this area, because there's so many. I guess I'll move the staff recommendation. I'm not sure why we have so many, but for the purpose of safety and security, I understand, but we'll move the staff recommendation. Just way too many stop signs there.
Okay, so moving staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. SC 2419, bus and bicycle exemption, Victoria Park Avenue at Sloan Avenue. And Councillor Thompson, this is also bordering onto Councillor Minimum.
Yeah, it's, yeah, so we'll move the staff recommendations that are here,
Okay,
or the recommendation as opposed to,
so that's moving staff recommendation.
yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. SC 2420 is school zone safety review, Benshire Drive area, and this is Councillor DeMare Makers.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay, moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And SC 24.21, All-Way Stop Control, Greenbrae Circuit and Sedgemount Drive. Councillor DeBeermaker.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move receipt of the item.
Okay, yeah. So moving receipt. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 24.22, Compulsory Stop Control, Corton Gate at Orangewood Crescent. Councillor Kelly. Moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 24.23, Speed Limit Review, Antrim Crescent. Councillor Kelly? Okay. That one's moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. SC 24.24, School Bus Zoning, Loading Zone Review, 37 Military Trail, and Councillor Ainsley.
I'm moving the staff recommendations.
Moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 24.25, Stopping Prohibition, Meadowvale Road, Councillor Hart.
Moving staff recommendations.
Moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. So there's one more, just to add on as added business, which is Councillor DeBeermaker. This is your request. So this is just a request for a report.
Yes, I don't know if the clerk can put it up, so I guess my first motion is just to add this as an added item, which is a request for a staff report on a crosswalk at a playground in TCHC apartment building on Greenbrae Circuit.
And everybody should have received the letter from Councillor DeBeermaker as well.
I don't think I circulated it.
Oh, okay. Is it up on the screen?
Yeah, if the clerks could put up the letter that requests to add a new item.
Do you want me to hold down? Okay, so you know what we'll do, Councillor, we will just hold.
Sure.
Go to the first fence that item, and then we'll come back to it.
Sure, no problem.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll be back.
I have copies that we can circulate as well.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. It's just
My
technical,
apologies,
difficulties.
And Madam Chair, I will blame it being the first week back at school or council. I was just able to type this up this morning based on some of the other staff reports that we'd received, so my apologies for the short notice.
Okay, no worries. And so what we'll do is you have it? Okay.
Thank you, Colleen.
Okay. So it's a request for a staff report, and that's to the October 17th, 2017 meeting of Scarborough Community Council on the feasibility of installing a pedestrian crossover at Greenbrae Parkette in the vicinity of 55 Greenbrae Circuit.
And Madam Chair, if I can clarify for my colleagues, the staff report is actually done. I just want to make sure it gets on the agenda for the next community council meeting.
Okay. Okay, so questions of the mover? Nope, seeing none. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And so what we'll do is move.
Madam Chair, do we have to do it twice? The first time is to introduce it as a new.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. So that's the.
First one.
Introduce, move to introduce, and then the second one is move to. And the first one passed with 2/3. Yes. And so that's to introduce, and now on the motion, all those in favor, opposed, and that carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving on to the first item, which is the fence exemption, the first fence exemption. And we do have speakers. So it's SC 24.1, request for fence exemption, front yard, 35 Horfield Avenue. And this is in Councillor Crawford's ward. And I have a Diane SM. Hi, welcome. How are you? Good morning. And so if you have not been here before, we just wanted to let you know you have 5 minutes to speak. And some counselors may ask you some questions after you've finished speaking. And there's a clock right there on the side that'll start your timer. Okay, thank you. Can you speak a little bit more into the mic?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time to hear our side of the story. When we started building our fence, we called the city beforehand, it is also a corner plot, so we don't have a traditional backyard. So we needed some privacy to build a fence. And prior to building the fence, we had hedges which attracted a lot of spiders, which would end up crawling in the house. And our contractor also told us that he maintained the height according to the city's requirements. And it has been 3 years since we built the fence, and no one has complained since now. And we have 3 letters from our neighbors who said they're okay with the fence. And also, we didn't take money from any one of our neighbors. We paid the whole fence on our own, which cost us approximately $13,000. Yep, that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the deputant? Yeah, Councillor Crawford?
When you built the fence, now this is a corner lot, and we've dealt with corner lots in the past. When you built the fence, were you aware, or did you come to the city to get any kind of approvals? Were you aware that, in fact, you were in contravention, or what was that process when you decided to build the fence? And on that, again, I'm assuming you had a contractor do this. Did the contractor mention to you that, in fact, this is in contravention of city bylaws?
Hi, this is Hasna. Good morning, everyone. I just called them, and they told me as long as it's in our property, it's okay to build a fence. And my contractor told me it would be fine, and he knows everything about it. And this is our second property, and I didn't made any fence before, so I'm not worried about this height and anything.
So you said that you contacted the City of Toronto staff, and they said it was fine?
Yeah, as long it's in my property, I can build it.
Okay, and then your contractor who built the fence also said the same thing?
Yeah,
So from your perspective, you thought you were building a fence that was fine?
yeah.
Okay. And I did go to your property a little while back, and I did discuss any option or opportunity to compromise, and would you be willing, in the event that, well, would you be willing to look at trying to see where there'd be a compromise to bring the fence down in certain parts of the yard and keep it a little higher in others? Because it's a corner lot,
Yeah.
sometimes we make exceptions, but again, we may not be able to make an exception for the entire property, but would you be willing to look at trying to figure out a compromise to bring the house into pretty much compliance?
It will
Or would
cost
you,
me.
are you really asking us to, you want to have the exemption as is?
It will cost me again, right? I have to call contractor again. They need to take it out and put it on again. I already spent a lot.
And I understand that, and
Yeah.
that's why I empathize with you in your situation, so we're trying to figure out if there's a compromise, or if there's a way that we can move forward on this without having you to potentially take down
Yeah.
a big part of the fence.
If it's there any not any other way, then I have to do it, right?
Okay.
I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have one other question from Councillor Karagianis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the deputant, thank you for coming today to tell us the difficulties that you have. When you hire your contractor, did you make sure if he was reputable? Did you make sure if he was licensed, or you just hired somebody that somebody recommended and was a fly-by-night contractor?
Somebody recommended me.
So you were not sure if he was dependable or sure of what he was telling you to do?
This is the first time I did it. I don't know anything about that. somebody recommended, one of my friends recommended him, then I called him, and yeah, that's it.
That's the difficulty. Thank you.
And Councillor DeBaremaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, and thank you very much for coming in today. And I just want to clarify, because I look at the photographs, and you have a very beautiful home. The fence that you built, I'll call it your front door, not where the driveway is, but on I'll call it the front of your house. How tall is that fence?
It's, I forgot the height, but the house is different than any other house. I can't say which is the front yard and which is the back yard. It's corner plot.
Yeah, so not the side where your driveway is,
Yeah, okay.
but I'm looking at a picture here at, again, I think it's Horfield Avenue, the frontage where the stop sign is.
Yeah, we don't know the exact height, but it's definitely higher than 1.2 meters.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you say, sir, earlier, I thought I heard, did you mention something about spiders?
Yeah, we had hedges before, and
Or I couldn't hear.
we had hedges
Okay, yes.
before, and there would be a lot of spiders that would go inside the house.
Okay, so the hedges are gone?
Yeah, the hedges are
And you
gone.
built a fence because it
Yes.
has less spiders and bugs and things?
Yep. And also, the hedges were about the same height that the fence is right now.
Right. Okay, great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Those are all the questions right now. We'll move to staff. If staff can come up and has any pictures that they could show us. Oh, and you can have a seat now. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is a site plan view of the property. You can see it's a corner property. Based on the configuration of the lot, the shortest lot line that abuts a street is considered the front lot line. So that would be the Horfield Avenue frontage. So that is the area of concern. That's considered the front yard. If you drew a line parallel to that wall facing Horfield Avenue, any portion of the fence that abuts the street in that location is considered a fence in the front yard and can't exceed a height of 1.2 meters. The other issue that is not in compliance with the bylaw is the fact that when in proximity to the front line with respect to a driveway, the fence has to be of a construction where you can see through the fence. And in this case, you cannot see through the fence. So you've got a driveway that is on the Horfield adjacent Horfield property at number 36, which is within 2.4 meters of that fence. So in a lot of cases, that causes a sightline obstruction. In this particular case, because of the size of the city boulevard, there isn't really that much of a sightline obstruction, unless, of course, the city chose to put a sidewalk in there or widen the road.
Okay. And questions of staff? Yeah, Councillor Lee?
So on that portion that is, how high is it currently?
So how high is the fence currently? Through you, Madam Chair. It's 1.85 meters high.
1.85. Without the letters, the top part, then how high will it be?
I believe it would still be about 1.55 meters high, approximately.
So all they have to do is bring that down to 1.2 meters, and they'll be in compliance, right?
With the height requirements, but there's
height
also the requirement to,
Open the
yes,
fence.
open fence, yeah,
Still be
construction. But like I said, because of the size of the boulevard, there's probably approximately 10 feet before you actually reach the curb of the traveled portion of the roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff? No, I just have a few then. Councillor Karygiannis, go ahead. You go first.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, good morning. The applicant said that the approach staff, and he was told that it's okay to build this. Does any of your staff have a recollection of this?
Not that I'm aware of. Through you, Madam Chair, not that I'm aware of, Councillor.
Thank you. How high is the present fence, and what should they be cutting back?
The maximum permitted height in that area is 1.2 meters. Yeah, just shy of 4 feet, 3 feet 11. And they have 1.85 meters high.
So if they have to take anything down, they will have to take stuff down which is not around the whole property, but just close to the edge type of thing?
Correct. Like I said, if you drew a line parallel to that wall of the house that is facing Horfield, that is all that's in red there. They would have to reduce the height of all that fence and potentially look at the fence construction.
And what about the fence that abuts the other street? I'm sorry, I can't read it on the map.
Alistair Avenue, I believe?
They wouldn't have to touch that?
Not once you get beyond that wall. Like I said, if you drew a line parallel across that wall, because that's considered a flank yard and you're allowed a higher
Do
fence.
a lot of, through you to staff, do a contractor has to be licensed in order to carry out work that includes fences, or can they just hire anybody?
Under Chapter 545 of the Toronto Municipal Code, there is a building renovator license required, but frankly, off the top of my head, I'm not sure if that incorporates fence construction. It may go under the category of landscaping and not be required to have a municipal license.
Find out that it has to be complied with. Can the contractor be charged?
Yes, if you're doing work in the City of Toronto for which you require a business license, you can be charged for.
This would be something that would fall under your purview.
Fall under the purview of municipal licensing standards, yes. Not me directly, but yes, under municipal licensing
Would
standards.
this be right away?
No, it would fall under municipal licensing standards, but be dealt with by our bylaw enforcement group in the licensing enforcement area, which we commonly work with and do referrals back and forth. So.
Would you follow up on that and find out if it was required, and and then direct the appropriate staff to lay out the appropriate charges?
Yes, I can certainly look into that matter and find out the information to determine if they are required to have a license.
Will you keep us abreast of that, please?
Yes, I can report back to you, yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, through you to staff. So the issue here are two elements. One is the height of the fence on the what appears to be the flankage or the front yard. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have the height.
The other is the issue in terms of visibility, because you're required to have a wire fence or a fence that's actually open so you can have access to the roadway and people can see in.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is correct.
Right. So we're just talking about that front piece.
Actually, the portion of the fence that's in proximity to their own driveway also has to be of open mesh construction on the Alistair.
So that's the area in red?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So,
yeah, red is indicative of the height, and yellow is indicative of the open fence construction.
and so are there, on the street itself, did your staff take a look to see, are there other homes that are similar in nature in terms of board fence right around the property?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of that information at this point, Councillor.
Okay. So the issue now is to try to either mitigate and or allow the height with respect to that area. In terms of finding a solution, either to reduce the height itself, but you still have the issue around visibility, correct? in terms of you don't have an opening, you don't have gaps in the board-on-board fence?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yep. Councillor Kelly?
I'll apologize if my questions are redundant. Take a look at Appendix 4, the photo. Turn your photo around, would you? Terrifical. Anything wrong with that fence?
Due to the proximity of the fence to the flankage property line and the driveway, there is an issue with sight lines.
Well, don't couch your language in a way that I can understand it.
Certainly.
The fence to the left of the driveway, anything wrong with that?
Yes, anytime you have a fence within 2.4 meters of a driveway, it is to be of open mesh construction.
That should be open, so the fence to the left of that driveway should be open. Is the height all right?
I believe that's the flankage yard, provided it is lower than 2 meters, the height should be okay.
And in the fence to the right of the driveway, should that be open?
Yes.
And should it be open all the way to the corner, or just?
No, just for 2.4 meters.
All right, almost to that tree, is that correct?
Probably not quite that far, it depends, usually the posts are about 6-foot spacing, so it's probably
And
about,
to the fence to the
1.5
left, again, to
panel.
go back to that, should that whole fence be open? Or just 2.1 meters?
correct, just that I think it's 4 meters.
So just past that tree?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Take a look at Appendix 5. Should that entire fence across the front of the house be open mesh?
No, only the portion of the fence within 2.4 meters of the adjacent driveway.
So that driveway, the neighbor's driveway to the right of the fence, there should be a 2.1 meter mesh fence on the front and going down the side of the driveway as well?
That is correct.
So the bulk of that fence, that solid fence, is okay, but it's too high.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. You asked most of my questions. It's better to have the visuals, so I'll just ask a few more. So the first question is the position of the fence. Is it in the right position in terms of from the road back towards the house?
Yes, there's no issue with the location of the fence.
Okay, so it's just the height and the fact that it's a solid fence. Those two issues?
That is correct.
Okay, and so which portions, I'm trying to see because it's around the entire perimeter, but which portions have the issues with sight lines? Can you take your pencil and show me?
Sure, so I'll show you first on Appendix 5. I left my pen over there, but it's right, oh, thank you. It's right in this area right here. So a portion of the fence along this, on the front, and then a portion back up the side, so to speak.
Okay, and that's so that the neighbor, when they're reversing out of their driveway, that they have a sight line, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the other, and then, so that's at the corner, and then is that with height and with, is that with both issues, the height and it has to be a mesh as well?
That is correct.
Okay, and then the other portion is along here. Can you show me with your pen?
Yeah, so on this elevation, you're looking at open mesh construction in this area and this area.
And that's sightline issues for if they're driving in and out of their own driveway?
That's correct.
Okay, and is there an issue with both height and mesh in that location as well?
Actually, the height, there is an issue with height, but it begins in this area here. Like I said, if you right across my pen there, that's all considered the front yard, and any fence in that front yard area cannot exceed a height of 1.2 meters.
Okay. And I know that you're not the contractor, but as Councillor Karagianis was saying, if this is something where they could have or should have had or if they do have a business license and they did not comply, is this something that the owners could go back and have that contractor rectify at the contractor's cost?
That would be a matter between the owner of the property and the contractor.
So it's not to do with the city whatsoever?
Correct. Be a
Okay.
civil matter.
It's a civil matter, okay. And is there complaints from the neighbor on the sightline issue, or is this just the observation of city staff?
Excuse me just for a moment, I review the file. I can't see anything specific to the sight line, but it was generated by a complaint.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. And those to speak? Yep, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move a motion to defer this item for 1 month. What I'd like to do, and I do empathize with the residents who, we've seen this at this table before where they get advice and they put up a fence, assuming that it was fine. So when I did meet with them, they really felt that they put up a fence that was legitimate, it was legal. We know it wasn't. What I'd like to do is to look at an opportunity to see if there's a compromise. We have, in the past, when you're looking at a corner lot, done some exemptions to figure out, and it really has to do with where you define the front of the house and the side of the house. Generally, in the front of a house, you have a driveway, which comes out at the front of the house. In this particular instance, you don't. You actually have a driveway that's at the side of the house. And they have spent, it's a really good fence, they spent a lot of money on it, but what they have done in putting in this configuration, which in many ways is sort of like a fortress around the house. Now, we don't allow fortresses around houses in Toronto, in this area, and it really it should not be allowed. So if I had to make the determination, the decision today, I'd probably not, I would support staff's recommendation. But I'd like to go back and see if there's an opportunity to figure out a way to look at, trying to comply or an exemption in some respects. So that where they have right now is the front of the house, that is designated the front of the house. They have deemed that, the way they've done it, as their backyard. So they have they put in a wonderful pergola, they have a lot of sitting space. So that's actually technically where they sit, and that is their backyard, even though it is technically their front yard. So what I want to do is to figure out a way, and I'll do this by the next meeting, to see if there's a way that we can do some sort of exemption to look at, potentially that would be what the backyard would be, and the side of the house would be the front yard. We have done those exemptions in the past, trying to be a little more flexible with the residents with a corner house. So that's my that's what I'd like to do. I will come back to council in another month. We may or may not come to a resolution, but I think I would like to have that opportunity to just work with the applicants or the residents and staff to see if there's a compromise.
Wonderful. And questions of the mover? Was there questions of the mover on this one? No? Just speak. Okay. And thank you. We'll move on to Councillor DeMaremaker and then Councillor Karagianis.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will support the local councillor for the deferral. I think we have a young family who has obviously invested some, probably their life savings into buying a house and making a really good investment, and I think they're going to be a very welcome addition to the community. I think they've already been there for a while, so I'm sure they know how great the neighborhood is. And I think this is the curse of the corner lot. It is an awkward place to be. I think the councillor working with the owners can come up with something that maybe, hopefully, we can all support. But I certainly look at this footprint, and I can't remember what the adjective you used to describe it as, a castle or a fortress? Fortress. A fortress. I would, not to be uncomplimentary to the owners, but I would describe it a little more as prison-like. Could you imagine if every house on this block did the exact same thing as this family? You would walk down 100 meters long with a 6-foot high solid row of invisible or not see-through fences. You'd never see your neighbors, you'd never see their kids, you'd never see their dog, you wouldn't know if they even have a garden. Maybe this is maybe this is a Trillium Award garden. That's one of the best gardens in the whole of Scarborough, but nobody knows. So I think one of the reasons we have lower fence heights along front yards is so that places don't look uninviting, they don't look prison-like, that people actually do wave at their neighbors when they go by, they mix and mingle with people. So I have sympathy for the family because the contractor really did them a disservice. The contractor built something that we all know. Nobody had to even read the report to know that this was not appropriate. The contractor, I'm sure, knew it was inappropriate, unless this was the first fence that he had ever built in his entire life, but I don't think so. So unfortunately, we are where we are, and I think the councillor's asking for something very reasonable, which is to give him more time to work with the owners to figure something out. So I look forward to this coming back, and we'll see where we are then. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Karygiannis.
Madam Chair, I sympathize with the owners, and I take them to the word that they did phone city staff. It's unfortunate they don't remember who they spoke to. However, something has to be said out loud about the contractors. We have all kinds of contractors in Scarborough. They're going around telling people, don't worry about the work, it's covered, we can do this and we can do that. I had contractors that come in and take supporting walls down. I had contractors that put up fences. And I find that the responsibility is certainly on the contractor, and they have to make sure that they give the proper advice to the house owner. But at the end of the day, the onus stands on the property owner to make sure that, number one, the contractor that they hire has that, is designated, licensed by the city, is a reputable individual, and they just don't hire somebody that just comes to gives them a lower code in order to do the work, and they end up in this mess. I will support the deferral. However, I will be very hard pressed to support anything that our staff do not approve of. So I'm going to, let the local council work on it, but there's no excuse, and I mean no excuse for any house owner that does not do due diligence and does not talk to staff, does not take staff's name down. Would it be 311 or the local bylaw officers, and gets themselves in that predicament? And there's no excuse for any house owner that does not ask the contractor to provide them with their licensing that they have from the City of Toronto, and to make sure that they're noted and make sure that they're reputable. There's too many contractors out there that are flying around and putting people, good people, in jeopardy like these people are. And it's a real shame. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any others to speak? Nope, see none. Okay, and I'm just going to, I'm going to support the deferral as well. And it's really unfortunate. I'll say what Councillor Karygiannis just said, is that when you don't have a proper contractor that understands the bylaw and is following the bylaws, then these are the unfortunate consequences. And hopefully, with Councillor Crawford and with city staff and trying to work with that contractor to rectify the situation, will be very helpful, and that sightline issues will be resolved, because I think that's what the most important issue here is, more about safety. and hopefully that will be resolved by the next community council meeting. So in saying that, this is Councillor Crawford's deferral motion, that consideration of the item be deferred until its meeting on October 17th, 2017. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And so that's been deferred, and so you'll be working with Councillor Crawford to try to rectify the situation. Thank you. And so we're almost upon 10:30, which means that in about 2 minutes, we'll be moving to a timed item.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yeah.
We have a time item additionally, which is SC 24.2, which was scheduled for 9:40, along with the matter we just dealt with. The applicant has indicated that she and her family member has to leave, and so
Okay.
just wonder if we can just follow the agenda and deal with that, because while we do have a 10:30, we still haven't finished the 9:40.
Exactly, yes, okay, that's true. And so we'll continue with that. And so we'll move. Yeah, yeah, okay, great. And so that one is SC 24.2. It's request for fence exemption side and rear yards 34 Torridale Crescent. And that's in Councillor Thompson's ward. And there's speaker with Morticia Shin. She's the owner. Chin? Ms. Chin?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to plead my case about the height of a fence that is 6 feet tall, the recommended height, excluding the lattice. I was told that the lattice was just a decoration. I was not aware that the lattice would be included in the height of the fence. Because of this lattice, I feel more safer because it is much harder for anyone to jump the fence. And I'm 86 years old and nervous. When I'm around the back doing my gardening, I feel safe. I also been around and see fences as tall as mine. And I have my grandchildren, sometimes they come here and they play around, and I want them to be safe. And I would appreciate, I'm hoping that I'd be allowed to leave it as is, and I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you for your understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Chin. And there's questions, and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Chin. Ms. Chin, have you had any complaints with respect to the fence from your neighbors?
Any complaints? Have there been any complaints from your neighbors? Has there been any complaints from your?
Well, no, I didn't have any complaints.
Thank you. And the fence is exclusively in the backyard area of your property?
Yes.
And you've indicated that the height of the fence itself, absence of the lattice, is actually 6 feet?
What did you say?
Yes, without the last 6 feet.
The height of the fence,
6 feet.
without the lattice, is 6 feet.
6 feet.
And so you've added the lattice as decoration, is that?
Yes.
And there are other fence in the community?
Yes, I've seen,
Let me
yes.
just finish the question.
Yes.
So there are other fence in the community that has similar height?
Yes.
With the addition of the lattice, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've indicated to me when we spoke, you had some concern about the safety of yourself, and you've just expressed to the forum that concern about your grandchildren and so on.
Yes.
There are a couple of young people across the road from where you reside, is that correct? A couple of young boys?
Yes. What is it?
The young boys across the road.
Oh, yes.
Sorry?
I'm a little back here.
Oh, so hearing.
Little louder,
okay.
please.
So when we talked, you were concerned about some of the activities.
Yes.
Some of the neighbors on the other side, particularly the young boys.
That's right,
that
yeah.
Threw things and did other things which I won't get into here.
That's right.
You were
Yeah.
concerned about that.
Yes, I'm concerned about that.
Does the lattice help you in terms of addressing some of those concerns of things being thrown over the fence, which would, I mean, naturally you could throw it over anyways, but does the lattice provide you with some relief?
Yes.
Okay, so that was part of the issue in terms of additionally decoration, but also additionally, there were some concerns about being able to prevent things from being thrown into your yard. Is that correct?
That's right.
So this was an issue around safety.
Yes, sir, that's
And-
right.
And there are other properties in the community that are relatively close to your home that is similar in nature with the height of the fence of 6 feet plus an additional 2 feet or so of lattice. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just one final question, Speaker. There are no sightline issues as it relates to your backyard. We just discussed a fencing matter a moment ago. There were issues around sight lines. There are no vehicles associated with respect to your backyard. It's just simply your backyard.
That's right.
And again, your neighbor has no problem. Your neighbor is adjacent to your property. She has no real problem with the issue. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. I just wanted to ask one final question. The property was put in and installed by a, I guess, credible contractor?
That's my son.
Your son. Is your son a contractor?
Pardon?
Is your son a contractor?
No, he's just doing for me as a favor.
Okay, so he's a handyman then?
Yes,
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
They must go?
No, seeing none, thank you so much. You can sit down now. Thank you. And then, was there anybody that?
Question for staff.
For staff, okay,
I don't know
great.
if there's anybody else here. The neighbor adjacent is not here. She's actually supportive, but she did have an issue that I wanted to ask staff.
Perfect. Okay, yep, so questions of staff?
I can ask you from there. You
Okay.
have to move. Sorry. The height is, of the fence absent of the lattice, is that 6 feet or just 5.9 feet or so? Is that,
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it's 1.8 meters, so 6 feet.
so it's regulation?
Correct, it's actually under.
Under, it's just under,
right,
absolutely,
yes.
1.85.
Can I just add to that, save and except for the little structure they've got on the side of their house there, I think it's forming part of the gate. You look at
the what, sorry?
Appendix 3,
Yeah,
and
okay.
you see a photo there they've got, looks like.
Which is a piece that's above the lattice?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if that were to come down, would that be an issue? Is that reinforcement, you think? Why is that piece
Don't
there?
have
Do you
that
know?
information, again, I can't tell from the photograph
Right.
what the purpose of that is. If
But there's a
it's-
gap in between the lattice and that particular piece of wood. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So there are no sightline issues?
That is correct.
And have you had any complaints with respect to the installation of this fence?
I'm not aware that we've
No
received any
complaints,
complaints.
okay. Okay. Based on your professional opinion and your experience here, have you seen other types of structure similar to this where there is a fence that's regulation or just under the regulated height and then an additional component part of a lattice piece being attached? Have you seen that in your experience?
Yes, I have.
And has this body provided those exemptions based on a lattice and fence at regulated height in the past?
Yes, it has.
Would it be a real stretch if we were to approve this particular fence and provide an exemption for this resident? Would there be any safety issues? Would there be any real concerns on your part and based on your professional experience?
I certainly don't have any concerns with respect to safety in regards to the fence.
Right.
And falling short of having any specific opposition to it, then I don't see that there's a great impact.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Yep. Okay. Councillor Kelly?
How did this situation come to the city's attention?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the specific investigation folder in front of me today, but from what I can see, all I have is that the owner came in and applied for the fence exemption. That's all the information I have before me.
Now, the fence is already up and has been for some time, is that correct?
yes. I don't know for what the duration of time has been, but yes, it has been.
Now, the explanation for the lattice work by the owner is that boys across the street were throwing stuff into the backyard. Has your staff talked with the family to find out why they put it up, and is that the story that they, or the explanation that they heard?
I'm not aware of those particular issues.
If that explanation, or based on that explanation, if the boys are across the street, would they need lattice work all the way along the boundary between their house and number 44? Because I'm assuming the lattice work goes all the way around the property.
It's very hard for me to say, Councillor, with respect to that matter. If the young boys are living across the street, I don't know that, if the allegation is they're standing out front and throwing materials from the sidewalk, or if they're going on to adjacent property owner's property and throwing it over. I really don't, it's very difficult for me to answer that question.
What's the property to the top of the photo on Appendix 2?
I believe that's number 36, Tordale.
I'm sorry?
It's a residential building at number 36, Tordale.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And any other questions of staff? No, seeing none, thank you. And to speak, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm going to move that we grant the application for the fence exemption. The applicant is as you've heard, I believe is 80 years old, or 86, 85? 85, right? 85? 86, okay. Well, she looks 80. What, 86. She is the property owner. She has lived at the address for some time. I do know her. I know her neighbors. I know all the people in the street, actually, in the area. There are no concerns from the immediate neighbors, and then beyond. The property is, and as you can see by the photos here, it's nicely tucked in to the very back. There are some issues with respect that has been brought to my attention around concern that the neighbor has about other neighbors and activities and so on, and I do believe it to be valid. I've had other issues raised as it relates to the young people in question. This is not an unusual situation within the community in that you have the fence and fencing that are at regulated height, and then there are additional attributes that are added, which some are decorative in nature, and there's a view that I don't necessarily share the view 100%, that it adds additional element of safety and security and so on, but nonetheless, I've had the opportunity to visit the applicant's neighbor, to talk to her about, she's also a single member, a senior member of the community, who has no real concerns about the fence. And she just simply wanted to ensure that there were no construction issues as it related to the installation of the fence. Now, I'm not a professional fence viewer or sitter, or I don't have the ability to review, but from the naked eye, it seemed everything was structurally okay, but I don't profess to be an expert in this particular area. I've had, and all of us have had, many opportunities to examine and visit fence. It's one of the big issues that we deal with here at Community Council, interestingly enough. And so I have no real concerns about the height of the fence. The lattice itself, I mean, it's really, not so noticeable in terms of where the fence is located and the other properties surrounding. The property that Councillor Kelly asked in question number 36, they have a very large shed in the back. They do other things on their properties and so on. I note now when I drove by the property this morning, for example, they're doing some major landscaping work there. I gathered from Ms. Chin's desire. She has a large family to entertain and so on. And so I actually have no real concerns in terms of moving the exemption and asking members for their support on this particular request of Ms. Chin. And I make that point because I did drive around the neighborhood with one of my staff members, and we looked at other fence and other properties in the area, not beyond a 3-kilometer radius, but within a half of a kilometer radius. And there are similar properties, and we either have granted those exemptions, have not dealt with those exemptions because there have been no complaints and so on. So I think that this is something that we ought to allow, and so for those reasons, I'm supporting and moving the motion to grant the exemption. And staff, I want to compliment the staff. They're doing their job according to our rules, but that's part of why we are here, to examine these things and to use a level of reasonableness to say whether or not this is something that contravenes sort of the good nature of the community standards and so on. Does it have a negative implications to that? I submit to you that it does not. In fact, there's an enhancement. There are people investing in their properties and so on, and this isn't an issue around safety or in terms of sightline safety or issues relating to that. It's in the very backyard, and I think it's something that would be a benefit to the applicant.
Great, thank you. And any others to speak? Nope, seeing none. So on Councillor Thompson's motion, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Yeah. And so that passes. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to continue on through the agenda. We have 2 more fence exemptions to deal with, and then on to SC 24.5, which is 3655 Kingston Road. The next one on the agenda is SC 24.3, request for fence exemption pool enclosure rear yard 73 Asian Court Drive. And this is Najib Jouri, which is the owner. Mr. Jouri, thank you. Welcome to Scarborough Community Council.
Morning.
Good
Madam
morning.
Chair, councillors.
And so you've probably seen the format, so you have 5 minutes to speak.
It's fine.
And the timer's on the side.
I don't need 5 minutes, fine. Right, the councillor, we put a fence. Councillor came and saw it. Mr. Chen Lee saw it. And everything looks good. We did it proper. He requested to put a camera higher, and it should be okay. I mean, it's up to you guys to say yes, or if we need to do any other things to it, we're ready to do it. But it's sitting in concrete, like any railings or like any post would go in. I have no issues with it.
Okay, and questions of the
Any
deputy?
questions?
Councillor Lee?
Now, you were saying that the post, well, you got basically 2 points that did not meet the requirement. One was that the post be embedded to a depth. Now, but I visited you, I noticed that they were bolted onto the concrete. Is the concrete continuous?
The concrete is continuous, yes, all around the pool.
So it's not slabs that we are talking about, this
No, it was poured concrete with rebar and on gravel.
And you have pool cover.
And I have an automatic pool cover.
It's a very tough pool cover, right?
100%, yes.
And to activate, open and close that pool cover, you have to enter a security code in, just like a house alarm, right?
You have to enter a 4-digit code, press the OK, and then move it forward or reverse, And it has to be, you have to have sight vision right directly at the pool, yes.
And you have a security camera?
I have 2 security cameras which go into a DVR, and I have a camera that's just focused on the pool. Any motion, it comes to 2 phones, to my wife's phone and my phone.
Cell phone, you alert you on your cell phone, right?
Yes.
All right. So you have taken all precautions, and you were saying they're going to add a couple of more.
I can add another camera higher, yes. That's no big deal.
Thank you.
Never enough security.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And any other questions? Nope, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll just go to staff for your input.
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't know how well you can see this drawing, but it's a survey of the property which shows the property boundaries, the location of the buildings on the property, and the location of the pool. The sightline issue in Chapter 447 of the Toronto Municipal Code, it talks about having visibility of the area of the pool capable of being filled with water from the main living areas in the home. On this particular property, there's a change in grade. It goes up higher in the backyard, so when you're on the main floor of the house, you can't actually see the surface of the pool. So that is why there is the one violation to our bylaw. The second one is, as indicated previously, the construction of the fence. Our bylaw details typical fence construction. Your typical fence, embedded in the ground, 900 millimeters in concrete. In this particular case, as the deputant had indicated, it's constructed more as a guard that you would find on a concrete balcony, for example. So it doesn't meet with the language in our bylaw. And it is the so-called fourth fence that is protecting occupants of the building from the pool. It's not a fence protecting adjacent properties, individuals from the pool. So that's basically the reasoning and the logic behind why the pool doesn't comply. The pool fence doesn't comply.
And questions of staff? Councillor Lee?
Yes, when these bylaws were written, I remember back in 2008, when the chair of Public Works was Councillor DeBearmaker, and I did ask a lot of questions about it. Now, when the post has been embedded, is it based on somebody climbing over it, or what is the reason for having the standard of embedding it rather than bolting it onto concrete?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, principally the construction requirements are with respect to climbability and the loads on that fence if someone was to try and climb it. Naturally, there's other natural environmental factors as well, that wind loads and so forth, which wouldn't really apply in this case because it's open fence construction. So basically the bylaw is designed with respect to climbability issues.
So I did visit it with your supervisor, Dave Cree, and we looked in it, and it's strong enough to withstand anybody, a toddler climbing on it, So I think it should meet those same standards as embedding it in.
Yeah, like I indicated, our bylaw sets out minimum construction standards, and of course it can't take into account all the different types of constructions, methods and standards of fences, so it just gives you the basic ones, and then if somebody wants to deviate from that, then unfortunately they have to request an exemption to do so at this point in time.
Have we given exemptions where visibility was not complete in the past? I remember one case in the south end whereby actually there was a garage between the pool, and we just allowed cameras to be installed, and we allowed the exemption. Is that?
That is correct. I am familiar with that one as well, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, seeing none. Thank you so much. Yeah, and to speak, Councillor Lee.
I'm going to make short. I deferred this item from before the summer so that I can have a chance to visit, and I know the area well. And when I was sitting on the Public Works on this fourth fence bylaw, I did have a lot of questions whereby even the face of a wall, a house, wasn't allowed as a fourth fence. You had to put something else in front between the wall and the pool. And this is based on old technology whereby you don't have cameras of the same quality that we have now, whereby you can detect motion and it alerts you on your cell phone. Okay. Now, how often is somebody at home that's monitoring the pool all the time? So with a motion detector, it's even better. And a pool cover that I went to look at is a tough membrane that covers the surface of the pool, so that when nobody is using it, there's no danger of a toddler falling in. And one reason why we placed this force fence requirement was that 3 toddlers died in one summer. And that was with people at home as well. So I think this particular construction, although it violates, it's got a couple of things that don't meet, but I think the homeowner has taken enough steps to ensure that those, the safety concerns are addressed. So I'm going to move the option 2, which is a grant application to the property owner. I mean, I went to speak to him, and he looks very responsible. And people mainly using the pool as his own family. So I think he's going to take all the precautions that's necessary to ensure that his family is safe. So I'm going to move option 2 and hope you support it. Thank you.
Questions of the mover? Nope, seeing none. Okay, so then it's option 2. The staff can put that up. You don't have it ready yet. I think we know option 2 if everybody is reading it. It's okay. So Councillor Lee is moving option 2, which is to grant the application, and that's for the property owner of 73 Asian Court Drive for the existing pool enclosure fence construction and the restricted visibility of the pool located in the rear yard without conditions. So all those in favor? Oh, you want recorded vote? Okay, and all those in favor, recorded vote. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Hart, Councillor Shan, Councillor Lee, Councillor Holland, Councillor Crawford, and Councillor DeBear-Maker, and opposed, and Councillor Ainsley, and so that passes. And so that's granted. If I see the applicant, where is he? There, it's granted. Okay, thank you. Is the item is amended on that? Item is amended or no? What's that? It is already. Okay, so moving on to the final fence exemption for today. And this is SC 24.4, request for fence exemption in rear yard along East Line Lot 216 Island Road. And this is in Ward 44. And just 1 second. Yeah, this is welcome to the Fence Club to Councillor Hart. And so today we have 4 speakers on this item, and the first speaker up today is Derek Cassidy. Thanks. And just if anybody else does wish to speak, the clerk is down here and you can register. And the next ones up will be Carmela Martinuk, Tiger Lau, and Christine Lau. And Mr. Cassidy, thank you. and you've probably seen how it works here. You have 5 minutes to speak, and the timer's at the side. Thank you.
Good morning, councilors. My name is Derek Cassidy. I'm the homeowner at 216 Island Road, and I'm also the person who, my wife and I, we applied for the exemption at our property. It won't take much of your time. This fence was originally built at the request of the neighbors. They wanted the fence for the intention of privacy. I lived there a bit longer with them. Never really had the desire for a fence, but was happy to build one. I thought it'd be good for our family as well, because now we have 2 young daughters, a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I thought it'd be nice. We live on a busy street, Island Road, so the backyard is really our only place for privacy. My professional background, medic in the Canadian Forces and firefighter, municipal firefighter in the city of Markham. So, you know, I also like to provide for the community, and naturally, I like to follow the rules, being in the Canadian Forces. So I'm also very thorough, so I looked into the bylaw requirements. I saw that it had to be built within 2 meters, so I told the contractor and made sure, you know, that it was built within 2 meters. What I wasn't able to interpret from the bylaw, and what really caught me off guard when I got the notice of violation, was that because of the slope of the hill, and I have a retaining wall, this put the fence over. So the fence is just under 2 meters, but because of the grading of the street, which and my property, which I can't control, this is what puts it over, not the fence itself. So I'm a very conscientious homeowner. This retaining wall as well, when I first moved into the house 7 years ago, was starting to collapse, and soon after, a portion of it did collapse. I replaced it with a new retaining wall. It was a very large investment, cost approximately $50,000, and I've done many other home upgrades since. My intention is to always create a very structurally strong property and a very aesthetically pleasing property. Landscaping is one of my personal hobbies and interests, so if you were to see my house, you'll see that I take very good care of it. The fence itself, you know, 6x6 posts. They go 4 feet into the ground. The boards themselves are 1.5 inches thick. They're tongue and groove. My father, who's here as well, we spent 2 weeks sanding it. We stained it. It's beautiful. And fortunately, when I did get the notice of violation, I went to all my neighbors, who I get along with very well. And you can see here there's 5 letters. I have a letter of support from a neighbor on both sides of me, the neighbor to the rear of me, the neighbor across the street from me, and the neighbor 2 doors over from me. Who all feel that it not only is beautiful, but it adds to the neighborhood, and they're happy with how it exists. This is all I really have to say, so thank you for your time. Also, on the note of additional speakers, there's only one additional speaker today, and that's my one neighbor, Carmela. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Thank you. And questions of the deputant? Yep, Councillor Hart.
Mr. Cassidy, just a quick question. Just wanted you to remind us again, you did check the bylaw when you built the fence, is that correct?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm very detail-oriented, so I did check the bylaw, and I looked, and I saw that it had to be in the requirements of 2 meters. You know, I was there when the fence was being constructed to make sure it was being built within 2 meters. And as I mentioned, I wasn't able to interpret from how the bylaw was written that the slope of the street and the retaining walls become an issue and add to the total height. So it was upsetting to me, because I like to follow the rules, and I'm not looking to break any rules. But unfortunately, reducing the height of the fence takes away the whole purpose of the fence, which is the privacy. And this is the only space that me and my young family have to spend our private time.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions, the deputant? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. And next up is Carmela Martinyuk.
Good morning.
Hi.
I'm Carmela Martinyk, and I'm here to support leaving the fence at 216 Island Road as it exists. It's an absolutely beautiful fence. There's no question about that. There are no issues in terms of, as I've listened to your conversation, in terms of sight line, or in fact, it seems to me, living in the neighborhood, that it would be ridiculous to concern ourselves and waste everyone's time over a few inches of fence when a few doors down, a monster home's being built, which absolutely obstructs sight lines and airflow. Derek has done a tremendous amount of improvements to his home. He rebuilt the retaining wall. He's done work in his garden. This is a beautiful fence, and I absolutely would support leaving it intact, remaining at the height that it is.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And questions of the deputant? No? I just have a quick question. Are you abutting, or are you joining a neighbor? Are you neighbor to the
Yes,
fence?
my garden, our gardens meet. I am further up the hill. And definitely it is, Island Road slopes right down at the bottom of the street is the Rouge River. So their property in terms of your front yard can be lower than your backyard, and even in your garden in the back, it's at various heights as well.
Thank you. Great. Thanks so much.
No other questions?
Yep. No. And next up to speak is Tiger Lau. That's it? Okay. So Tiger Lau and Christine Lau are not here then. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And so questions of staff? Just Councillor Hart? Do you have questions of staff? Yeah, okay. So questions of staff.
Just one very quick question to staff. The violation in the backyard was strictly associated with the retaining wall, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is correct.
Otherwise, the fence complies, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you. And to speak? Councillor Hart.
Very quickly, as I always will be. Just wanted to say to Mr. Cassidy, I was out at his property last week. He built a fabulous fence. It looks terrific. His whole property looks terrific. He went above and beyond, as I think most residents do, check the bylaw, and nowhere in the bylaw does it get so specific that it talks about building fences on top of retaining walls. He did not build this intentionally in violation of the bylaw, and I move to grant the application.
Okay. So, and is there questions of the mover? Nope, seeing none. And so this is moved by Councillor Hart, and it's to grant the application by the property owners of 216 Island Road for the existing wood fence without conditions. And all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. So that's to grant the exemption. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And so that takes care of all the fence exemptions, and we're moving on to SC 24.5, which is 3655 Kingston Road Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Amendment and final report. And this is statutory under the Planning Act, and there are a list of speakers today. And I just want to know if the applicant is here today. Okay, thank you. And let me see here, okay. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go to the applicant first, and the applicant may speak, and then the deputants will follow. Sorry, where's the applicant? Yeah, if you wanted to come and speak to the development application.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of Community Council. My name is Janice Robinson. I'm with Goldberg Group, Land Use Planner. First of all, I want to thank staff for their staff report because they're very thorough in their report. We worked with staff for over 2 years to come up with a design that meets all of the city's OP policies and criteria for a project. The planning staff report contains a very thorough and comprehensive analysis of the proposal, arriving at the conclusion that this development meets all of the OP policies, guidelines, and planning principles for design and land use. Overall, this development will upgrade Kingston Road. It's a 9-story mid-rise apartment building, condominium apartment building, designed to be very attractive, and frankly, most of the people who've purchased units in this building are retirees, many from Scarborough. It's a significant investment in the community. It will be a benefit to the community, providing an attractive housing option for residents who are downsizing and want to stay in this area. Again, most of the purchasers are retirees that live in Scarborough now. The mid-rise height is appropriate. As you can see in your report, all of the sides, from all sides, it meets the angular plane. It's below the angular plane. The development is sufficiently separated from the neighborhood. It doesn't abut any residential lots. The property has roads all around it. It's designed such that there will be no overlook because the rooftop terrace is stepped back. There'll be no breach of privacy to the surrounding neighborhood. Traffic has been cited as one of the main issues by, and you'll hear this today, but it has, and there have been 2 community consultation meetings, and traffic was one of the main issues that was talked about. But your traffic department, your transportation department has reviewed everything, and they have no concerns about the traffic generated by this development. The traffic consultant for the project is here today and can answer if any technical questions come up. So in my closing comments are that this development does represent good planning and will make a positive contribution to this area of Scarborough. And I strongly urge Community Council to adopt the staff recommendation and approve this development.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And are there questions of the applicant? Yep, Councillor DeBermaker.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And I may ask this of staff, but I just wanted, as representing the owner, what's the current zoning on the site?
It's a residential zoning. I'm sorry, it's a commercial zoning.
Commercial, yeah, so I'm reading
It's,
here, because
highway commercial.
my eyes.
Highway commercial.
Okay, and then
Highway commercial, and
I
it's
don't
an
wanna put-
existing gas bar.
Okay, I don't want to put any
Or
ideas into your head,
car
but
wash.
yeah, my eyes popped out when I saw highway commercial, because I know that zoning. So I just want to understand, because you're representing the owner, there's a highway commercial zoning on there.
Yes, there is.
Is there a height limit currently on that land?
The highway commercial zone category does not have a height limit.
Sorry, say that again.
The
It's
highway
not, that's
commercial
right.
zone category does not have a height limit.
One of the reasons why my eyes bugged out. So in theory, if you're the owner of the property, had a client who wanted to build a 25-story office tower there, that would be legal. Is it your understanding? I'm going to ask our staff later, but is it, as a landowner, is that your understanding?
Well, the official plan does need to be amended to permit the residential uses, and the zoning bylaw does need to be amended to permit the proposed uses. And then
Oh, no, I'm not
all
talking
of
about this
the avenue policies kick in at that point, avenue, mid-rise policies, and those are the policies that I was referring to.
Yes, and I'm not actually asking you a question about your current application. I'm asking you, as an alternative use,
Oh, like a hotel, for
a
instance?
hotel or office building could be built here 25 stories tall, and it would conform to the zoning, so we couldn't stop you.
Correct.
So I guess maybe through you, Madam Chair, my question to you is, why are you here with only a 9-story building when you have a legal right to build a 25-story building?
Well, because the proposal is for a residential building.
Okay, so you don't want to build a 25-story office building.
That is not what's proposed.
You could, right? You could, but you don't want to.
Correct.
Or you could build a 25-story hotel.
Yes.
and then we would all have a debate about what is residential, because they could lease out those apartment units, hotel units as well. But we'll get into all that, okay. But, so you have a legal right to go as high as you want, but because you want residential, you're coming down to 9 stories.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And other questions of the applicant? No, yeah, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. And first of all, I do want to thank you for the amount of work that you have been doing with staff over the last number of years. Now, the councillor was mentioning that this is zone commercial, no height restrictions. What's the designation of this site?
It's designated neighborhoods.
So it's designated neighborhood, and generally when something's designated neighborhood, you would assume that, it would fit in with the local neighborhood, which is, and behind this, it is all residential. So I think, and we'll hear from the community when they come down in opposition to this, is that because it's designated neighborhood, they feel that this should be no more than, say, 4 stories or townhomes similar to what's beside there. So that is their contention, that this is designated neighborhood. And I think that's one of the, wouldn't say the flaws, but one of the challenges we are having on how something is zoned and how something is designated, because designated actually means neighborhoods, which would, indicate that you would want it to have a lower height.
It's also on an avenue, though, and the avenue policies do apply as well.
And yeah, and that's...
And that's another one of the designations.
Yes, and that's where I think when the challenges we have, and we will start hearing that today on how it's zoned, how it's designated, and the different avenue studies, that there's a lot of different, I guess, rules that we're trying to apply here, and I think that's one of the challenges with the community is, this is designated as neighborhood, and they would like to keep it as neighborhood. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Through you to the Speaker, I had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to drive around that area. In fact, I was showing the High Commissioner of Canada to India and his wife, the whole guild and the whole Scarborough. And I recall seeing a number of, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a number of sort of high-rise buildings in the general vicinity. Is that correct?
Yes, well, across the street, there's,
Right.
Yes.
So the designation, the neighborhood designation, do you know when that came about? Was that prior to that development or thereafter?
Well, across the street has a different land use designation.
I understand,
So,
but it's in the vicinity.
But the designations, all of the designations, the official plan was adopted in 2006.
Right.
And I think at that time, there wasn't really the thought of what this property could be used for, and maybe the avenue policies weren't as clearly understood. And maybe there wasn't the input into what that designation of this property should be at that time.
Now, this area, again, you help me with my memory because I'm not the counselor in that area, but it's at the end of Eglinton Avenue where Eglinton and Kingston Road meets?
Yeah, it's just south and west.
To the west?
Yes.
But generally in that vicinity?
Yes.
And you have to the, I guess, going towards Markham Road, you have a plaza there with a grocery store and
Yes.
other activities? Right. I'm just trying to get my bearing in terms of, so the issue that you've raised that some of the residents have are around traffic, and a 9-story would have you, I believe the report says your 99-unit dwellings, is that what
Yes.
you're? And how many vehicles are you planning for as part of that development? How many parking spaces will you have on that site?
About 140 approximately.
Okay, so 130, 140? And does that include visitors as well, or is that
Yes.
for visitors?
Yes.
Okay, right. All right. Okay, so the issue around traffic, what other issues have been raised by the neighbors in the neighborhood?
Generally about the use itself. And
So
the
there is a
it being a condominium building as opposed to something more low-rise.
Okay, so if it was a 4-story, that'd be okay?
You'll have to ask them, but
No, no,
I
but
think so.
from
I
your
think so.
sense of
That's my
understanding
understanding,
of the
yes,
right,
that's
okay.
my understanding.
Okay, so there's a differential there in terms of the height and perhaps the number of units.
Right, actually, I just looked, it's 130 parking spaces.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
The breakdown is 105 resident parking spaces and 25 visitor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. And any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. And so what we'll do is move over to the residents and to have a couple of extra residents to add on as well. And the first speaker is Dino Lombardi. Mr. Lombardi, thank you. And Mr. Lombardi, so you have 5 minutes to speak, and some councillors may ask you questions. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And before I start, I'd like to also welcome and congratulate Councillor Hart for being representing Ward 44. I think it's an excellent choice. I'm a resident. I've been a resident of Scarborough for over 50 years, and currently in Ward 38 at 106 Banmore Boulevard for 36 years. So I've been a long-time resident of Scarborough and the area. I'm only 2 minutes away from this proposed development. I'm also a professional land use planner. I've been so for over 20 years. I don't come here in an official capacity. I'm here as a resident, a neighbor in the area, and I'm here in a sense because I'm a bit concerned about the development. I support the development. I'm certainly supportive of development, but I'm concerned about some of the vitriol around this development that's come from some of the local residents. The most egregious of which is calling this a high-rise. This is not a high-rise. That's a misnomer. This is a mid-rise development. So I want everyone to understand that. I support the development because it provides the type and mix of housing that I think is appropriate for the area. In fact, my wife and I are thinking of downsizing, and this is the kind of, this allows the kind of transition in place that we would certainly look at, and we are looking at it seriously. But beyond that, it also provides the type of housing that my son, for example, who's 27 years old, wants to take advantage of. He doesn't want to leave Scarborough. He doesn't want to go downtown. He doesn't want to go to North York. He doesn't want to go east. He wants to stay in the neighborhood. And this is the kind of development that allows him to do that, allows him to break into the crazy housing market in Toronto and stay in the neighborhood. And my wife and I are just thrilled about it. I will say that what I'd like to say is basically summed up paragraph 3 under summary in the report, which is what the staff report suggested. This is a sensitive infill. I might even go one step further and use planning jargon and say it's somewhat of a gentle density approach. And I think it's good planning, and I would hope that you endorse it. And I will leave you with one quote from Plan Canada's this month's Plan Canada. And it talks about the idea of housing. And it says, planners have an important role to play in how we rethink tenure to create a more equitable housing system along both income and generational lines. To do nothing is to accept that the presently imbalanced status quo is desirable. Again, I think from a planning point of view and just from a personal point of view, it represents good planning, good urban design, and I would hope that council endorses the amendments before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardi. Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. And up next is Rob Burridge. Mr. Burridge. Is Ron Hoekstra after that. Mr. Burridge, thank you very much. And then you have 5 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Madam Chair, councilors, and staff. My name is Rob Burridge. I'm a member of the Scarborough Village Community Association. I'm one of the presenters this morning that will be sharing desires from the residents of our neighborhood regarding 3655 Kingston Road, the official plan amendment, and the zoning amendment final report. I'd like to first take this occasion to thank you for the opportunity to speak. The completed petitions from the signed community residents are not in favor of this staff report presented today is overwhelming. For the record, there are 1,062 signatures in total. These were delivered to the clerk's office and Councillor Crawford's office last week. The petition was designed and a copy to Councillor Crawford and Mr. David Sid of the Planning Department in March 2016. Today is a pivotal point in our effort to not move forward with this application and staff report. This effort by SVCA's deputation cannot be ill-advised or a failed endeavor. To the councillors here present today, this process and its circumstance will be present in your ward, if not already due to Avenue revitalization. I'm present today because the inappropriate action that started from the get-go with this applicant, the Goldberg Group. I walk through the community every day, and 3 years ago a sales pavilion was being erected at 3655 Kingston Road. No permits were obtained, as I learned through the City 311 and my local councillor. This was finally investigated by Municipal Licensing and Standards and confirmed. In April of 2016, the city hosts a community consultation meeting. The Goldberg Group has a chance to redeem itself with the community, working towards a mutual end product, which would be an appropriate scale, providing a 4-story block-type housing units such as townhouses or low-rise apartments. Instead, they presented a plan that was something completely different, a much larger building plan that was expected, 10 stories and not the original 8. The applicant showed that they were poorly prepared. Many times the representatives couldn't answer questions, and the community was told a building that was any smaller would not be in their interest. They could not afford anything smaller. Not a good start to impress the residents. Community outrage equaled the birth of the SVCA. So I ask you, how does a community get behind a developer like this? And how does a community council trust an application like this? The Goldberg Group tried one more time through Councillor Crawford's request to address the community in June 2017 to show a configured proposal. Again, it was our considered opinion the applicant was not prepared, nor took any of our community concerns seriously. Once again, the answers to questions from the 80-plus residents were not fully answered or dealt with. How is it that the applicant's street A-frame signs can be prevalent in the community over the weekends, and our resident lawn signs that promoted "Stop the High-Rise" on Muir? Community residents were told to pull and place their signs on their property out of traffic sight lines as per the direction from our city bylaw officers. How is it that the applicant is investigated for excessive noise on weekends for 4 weeks by our City Municipal and Standards Department? And do the disrespectful actions continue? This past July 9th, working into the early hours of the night, or I should say morning, demolition takes place on a sales pavilion, prompting calls and emails from the community to 311, the Ministry of Labor, our local councillor, and the police. Planning staff don't seem to care, in my opinion, as these issues are not reflected in the official plan, mid-rise guidelines, or revitalization of avenues. The staff report presented this morning does not offer a true picture from the community's point of view. It does, however, through the planning staff lenses, provides conformance, but only if the neighborhood designation is changed to apartment neighborhood. How is it that the SVCA is told countless times that by planning staff that the loss of a Lakeview and the Guild is not an argument for height? I'm rejecting the application and staff report. The planning staff defend the loss of view as the proposed development is in compliance with the official plan on page 12 of the staff report. Yet the Goldberg Group can use the view, and I quote, residence overlooking the lake and Guild, as well as stunning unobstructed views of Lake Ontario. The SVC residents can't argue the loss of view, but it's okay for staff and the applicant. I can certainly see how community lose credibility and public trust in the process. So I ask the questions. What's the impact here on this application and staff report on the residents in the area? What impact is there on the additional vehicle and pedestrian traffic?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Burge. That's the.
Is that
we're
over?
over
Wow,
time, yeah.
okay.
Goes
Well,
fast. But maybe somebody will ask you a question.
All right.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay.
And a question of the deputant? Yep, Councillor DeBeermaker.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today. And I'm sure you probably heard me talk or ask questions of the applicant. And I mentioned that my eyes popped out when I saw the current zoning on this property is highway commercial. You'd rather you don't want this 9-story building? You'd rather keep the current zoning on the site?
My understanding was that the current zoning is for 4 stories. And that's been from the beginning. So that's why we want this left as is. So it,
Okay, that's your understanding is that
Yes.
the current zoning only allows 4 stories.
yes,
And if it turns out that information or your understanding is incorrect, because the owner just told us, confirmed what I thought, is that there is no height limit on that property right now. They can go up to 25 stories right now. If that's confirmed, because you know, we might have a different understanding, but if, when we ask our professional staff what and we have our legal staff here as well, if they're legally allowed to build a 25-story hotel or office building, wouldn't you want to take this proposal and thank heavens that they haven't put something else in there?
again, our understanding is that it would be a 4-story maximum, so that's what the community's been after.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, in terms, you mentioned the loss of view. So if
Right.
this building is call it 9 stories, it's a 9-story proposal, who would lose their view? Like, I know the area, I live at Bellamy and Eglinton, I shop at the Metro. Who would lose their view?
There's certain residents in the area that would lose a view from their condo.
Would you be one of those people?
No, actually, I'm not.
Okay.
But I'm here, too, to speak for those that are unable to or can't.
Okay. So then you're concerned that there, and again, I'll ask staff later on, but
Right.
That there are some residents who will or could lose their view of the lake? or the-
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And just in terms of your own history on the site, do you live in a nearby house or apartment or condo?
I live across the street in a condo.
And is that it's not options for homes, but?
No, 3233 Eglinton Avenue.
Gilwood Terrace, I believe.
Yes,
Gilwood Terrace?
yes.
How tall is that one?
20-story.
And do you mind if I ask, I don't want your actual
No, no.
unit number,
Yep.
what floor do you live on?
I'm on the 18th.
So your view, though, wouldn't be impacted, you might see it, but it's not really impacting your
Not
personal?
impact. Again, I'm not here just on behalf of myself. I'm representing our association, and there were members that were residents in the area that had concerns.
Right, and through you, Madam Chair, so our planning staff never, to your knowledge, never said to you or to the community, oh, and by the way, you could have a 25-story hotel here with a banquet hall hosting weddings and banquets and conventions every weekend. They never mentioned that to you.
Counselor, at my age, my mind's getting to be a bit like a sieve, so I'm going to say I don't remember, but
Right, it's not, certainly not top of mind.
top of mind, no.
Oh, okay.
Thank
'cause would have been top of my mind.
Right.
Have you ever been in a banquet hall?
In a banquet hall?
Yes.
Of course.
You see what goes on in them?
I don't understand.
In terms of the use, so your use isn't so much with the residential use, it's just really with the height?
The height.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions? Yep. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. When neighborhoods express their concern about the height of a proposed building. They generally, it's generally by people who live closest to the building, who are afraid that the shadows that would be cast would detract from, their enjoyment of their property. Because this is so low, what is the fear, what's the concern about its height at that location, other than it may block the view of a small number of people supposedly in the condo just across the street?
Can anybody help me with that? I know that there were, if the word's tests, or to look at the angles of the shadowing, but I didn't hear a lot that was a concern from residents about it. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Well, you've got a petition of how many people?
1,062, if memory serves me
You
correct.
have a petition from 1,000 people.
Right.
According to the report from staff, the major concern at the public meetings was height, and
Councillor Kelly, we're all with the SVCA, and we could
Sorry.
probably shave off our
Sorry.
actual.
Yeah, we can't.
Sorry, we can't, so we
No,
can't.
you
Okay.
cannot. Sorry. It's just right individual. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
We'll address it when it comes up later.
I'm just trying to figure out how to take that expressed concern with respect to height, how seriously it should be engaged with such a low-rise building on the periphery of the community.
I think there was a number of concerns that came out with the petitions. One was, again, was the height. Certainly, through the numerous meetings that we had as a community association, safety, there was the fact that there were the additional vehicle and pedestrian, what's the word I'm looking for? Increase. Those were sort of like the issues that were all part and parcel of that 1,006. So it just wasn't a view, but it was also height, it was safety, it was the kids going to school, walking through the parking, through the community, et cetera. So it just wasn't the one issue.
Well, looking at attachment number 4 in the staff report, it would appear that, or actually attachment number 3 as well, it would appear that the number of cars or car movements that would be generated from that site would appear to be concentrated in the Kingston Road area. Is that correct? Or do they fear that people will be driving through the neighborhood to access Kingston Road?
People drive through the neighborhood. It's to get off of Kingston Road, so there's already additional traffic in the community. And there's a number of roads which the property is surrounded by, which is Bethune, Muir, the Kingston Side Road. So there's already having this amount of traffic added in, we're concerned.
Did you access any city data that gave you the volume of traffic presently on some of those roads? And
the only thing
have you contacted a traffic engineer to see how many car movements may be generated from a development of this size?
No, but we did our own traffic count where we sat and actually counted cars that were going up and down the streets at a multiple different time slots.
And what numbers did you come up
And
with?
sorry, that's the last question.
Okay, thank you.
You can answer that question.
Sorry? I'm
You
sorry.
can answer his last question.
Not knowing the history of the numbers in the community, we didn't know what kind of impact, but certainly there's enough that we were concerned just having a building and a number of units as such coming in, that there would be an increase. The fact of where even the entrance to the underground parking that's proposed with this development, we would have concerns because meters away, that's where there's multitude bus pickups for the children with the bus systems. Does that help?
Thank you. And any other questions of the deputant? Yep, Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few questions, sir, and good morning, and thank you for coming.
Morning.
You live on the north side of Kingston Road,
Correct.
and that's how high is that building?
20
20.
floors.
And I guess the objection is it the land, that, I mean, the amount of size that this property is going to be built on? Is it the height? What is the main objection that you have?
Again, I didn't get to finish my report, but yes, the height was one of the major issues that came out. Even the size of the land and how it's surrounded. It's like 0.7 acres. I mean, I look at a soccer pitch and it's like a quarter of a size of a soccer
How big is
pitch.
the property of your building?
That I don't know, I'm sorry.
Like, I'm looking at a map and I think your building probably is, you know, for the size of 20 stories is occupying maybe twice the size that the building across the street is occupying.
That's possible. I don't have any of that information from me. I can't answer that properly.
There's the map, right there.
Okay?
There's the map. So, I mean, your building is probably occupying, it's, you know, it's
Yes.
twice the size, 3 times the size. But so,
Fair
it's
enough.
really, I think what you're objecting to is the height across the street that's blocking the view of your 9 first floors, and they can't see the lake.
Well, as I stressed before, there are a number of people that, yes, it does affect.
Okay. So then, the people that are living south of there on Bethune Road, on Service Road, they're Moore Road Drive, I'm not sure if they're here today objecting. Okay. Did you also, I mean, I will ask them later, but in the fight that they're here to object, did they object your building too? Do you know?
No, I've only lived in the building for 20 years. I'm in my 20th year. It was built 26 years ago, so.
It'd be interesting to find out when your building was going up, what it was the residents in the south were saying. So I guess the main objection that you have, you're representing your building, is the fact that,
No, sorry, for clarification, Counselor, I'm representing the Scarborough Village Community Association. That building is only a piece of it.
okay,
Okay.
but the majority of the people, I guess, how many people signed in your building objecting to this? Of the 61,000, whatever? A good majority of them?
No, actually, the majority came from the communities south of Kingston Road. There's only 350 units, so, and I know we didn't get that. I would say maybe 100.
1/3. And that's probably from the lower floors. Would I be incorrect?
I think so. That's incorrect because there was also support from the B building. There's 2 buildings on the site, so that is incorrect.
Okay, now, if this was to be denied and it would go to the OMB, the OMB can come back and give them a 25-story building. Are you aware of that?
No.
And then, if that's the case, you know, anything goes to the OMB and it's like a crapshoot, and if they get a 25-story building, then what?
Then obviously it's law, right? I don't know that process. I'm just a local
You will
resident.
be worse off than you would
right?
be now.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the deputant? Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rob, for coming out. And I guess being the first deputy, generally the first deputy from the community gets all the questions. So I appreciate your I guess challenge in being up there and what you've been doing. So just to clarify, to end, the community, regardless of what the zoning is, and you're going to hear from staff in a minute, this is designated as a neighborhood. in the designation in the official plan. So from your perspective and the community's perspective, you would like to, for this particular development, to continue as a neighborhood. And that's really complementing the residential behind there, which are all single-family residential, and you want this building to complement that, which would be no more than, say, 4 stories, townhomes, or something similar. Is that correct?
Correct, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions? No, seeing none, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, thank you.
And so the next deputant is Ron Hoekstra. Mr. Hoekstra, thank you very much, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Hoekstra, lifelong resident of Scarborough Village. I live in one of the homes on Muir Drive. The fundamental difference between our fight and the other development applications along Kingston Road is that the 3655 address, according to the official plan, is designated neighborhood. The 11 development applications along Kingston Road highlighted by Tom Schwitterfeger, I apologize if I said that wrong, on page 12 and 13 from the staff report are all designated mixed use. It's the same plan that was adopted by Toronto City Council in 2002 and approved by the OMB in 2006. Yes, the Toronto City Council adopted this official plan. Highly respected Scarborough resident Derek Pinder, writer for the Bluffs Monitor, wrote in this month's issue, the official plan was written by talented people who had the future of the city in mind. Development of the plan went through the democratic process, which means that it had the majority of the citizens behind it. People are using it as a basis for life decisions, such as where they choose to live. In the official plan, Chapter 2.2.3, it reads, not all lands that fall within the avenues are designated for growth. These avenues have been identified at a broad scale to help assess urban design, transit, and delivery issues. However, where a portion of an avenue is designated as a neighborhood, the neighborhood protection policies of Chapter 4.1 will prevail to ensure that any new development respects and reinforces the general physical character of established neighborhoods. Let me read that again. Respects and reinforces the general physical character of the neighborhood. Changing a designation is the exact opposite of respecting. Reinforcing the general physical character means keeping that lot to 4 floors or lower. As well, in Chapter 4.1, it reads, over the past half-century, scattered high-rise apartment buildings were constructed in the midst of otherwise low-scale residential neighborhoods. The existing higher-scale apartments are recognized, but no new ones are permitted in areas designated as neighborhoods. This is basically saying that precedents of apartment buildings pre-official plan will not be considered. Over and over again in the official plan, it consistently uses language to protect neighborhoods. There are reasons why the neighborhood designation was given to this lot. First, this lot is surrounded on all 3 sides below Kingston Road by other neighborhood designations. I mean, how much more neighborhood do you need to get than that? Second, if a zoning change was to be made, the current designation is suggesting that a residential zone should be considered. This application is unique compared to most other development applications along the avenues in Toronto. It is one of the only lots not bordered by at least one mixed-use or apartment designation below the avenue. The Planning Department's argument from Chapter 4.1.9 about infill development on properties that vary from local patterns in terms of lot size, configuration, and orientation is misleading. The lots that the Planning Department talks about are not designated a neighborhood. Nowhere does it say that. They are referring to the surrounding neighborhood. They also carefully omitted a statement that says it is often not possible or desirable to provide the same site standards and patterns of development as the surrounding neighborhood. Well, it would be pretty difficult to convince anyone in this room that you cannot put a 4-story condo or townhome on that lot to keep it in line with the neighborhood designation. All across Kingston Road, you see low-rise developments respecting neighborhoods, including the recent Opal Townhome development only a kilometer away. We have over 1,000 signatures of support wanting to keep this neighborhood designation. To put this in perspective, our signature is equivalent to more than $4 million in property taxes each year. What the city is only gaining in property taxes from this proposed condo is approximately $135,000 if approval was given to go higher than 4 floors. That's peanuts in the whole scheme of things. Are you really willing to upset a passionate community for the sake of $135,000? Ladies and gentlemen, this area does not need more intensification. 7 more condos have already been approved for the Marketing Plaza across the street, adding more than 1,000 units and 1,400 vehicles.
Thank you. Sorry, your time's up. But somebody may ask you a question, and Councillor DeBeermaker.
Great, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, I'll call it at the Metro Plaza and that large retail area across the street has already got some, I guess, condos approved. But do you remember offhand the height of those condos?
I believe they were, maybe there was one 12 feet, or sorry, 12 floors, 20 floors, 7 floors. I think there was a mixed bag of those condos. But I know in total, it was approximately over 1,000 residents, or sorry, 1,000 units and over 1,400 vehicles.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you for coming today. Through the chair, I didn't catch, do you live in the apartment building or are you in the?
I actually live on Muir Drive, just on
Okay.
at the very end of it.
When was the site across the street, how long have you lived there?
I lived there all my life. On Muir Drive, I lived about 9
when
years.
the buildings were going on at Kingston and Eglinton, did the community put up such a fight as this?
To be honest with you, I didn't know anything about the condos going up until it was too late.
In the plaza next door, were you getting 1,000 units or so? Did you collect 1,000 signatures? I wasn't in council, so I don't know.
Well, you know, to be honest with you, the condos across the street, we recognize that that is an apartment neighborhood. That's the fundamental difference between ours and that.
My question was, and I'm sorry to interrupt, did the community collect 1,000 signatures?
For those 7 condos?
The ones that are going up across, behind, the ones that are going on the south side of Eglinton?
Yes.
They collected 1,000 signatures?
We collected 1,000 signatures for the 3655 lot, yes.
I'm talking about the ones that are southbound on Eglinton and east side of Markham.
Okay, my apologies about that. To my knowledge, I don't know. I didn't know about this application until it was already too late, that it had already been voted for.
When was your Guildwood Association formed? Was it formed because of the community organization? Was it formed because of this development?
The community association, yes, was basically born out of this 3655 development. That's when we felt we needed to get together.
If the community was not, the community organization was not developed when the Eglinton Avenue, the plaza on the south side of Eglinton and the east side of Markham, about those buildings, would I be incorrect in saying to you that the community was born in order to oppose this, so the 9 first floors of the building at Eglinton and Kingston Road their view will not be impeded in order to see the lake? Would I be incorrect in that?
I can't speak on behalf of other people. All I can say is that we're representing, we're fighting against its application below Kingston Road. What happened north of Kingston Road, I cannot comment to because I was not privy to that. I wish there was maybe more apathy more energy from the community, but I can't speak to them.
My question was that it looks to me, and I could be incorrect, and I stand to be corrected, that this was formed in order to fight the height. So the 9 floors on the north side of Kingston Road, the apartments, will not lose their view of the lake.
Actually, that's just one.
That's one issue. Okay.
That's just one aspect. I think you will hear, as we go through the deputants, that there are many aspects to this construction, this proposed construction, that we are against.
I'm going to ask the same question of all the deputants, if they remember when the buildings were going across the street, the 20-story that are there right now, if there was, such a, passion back then. If there wasn't, I think that there's other factors that are driving it. I thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to I'll ask this in the question form just to clear up some of the a little bit of confusion from my colleague. Were you aware that on the Markenton Square, which was the development you were mentioning a number of years ago, before it predates me and it predates my colleague, that in fact there was a lot of community opposition to it. There were 1,000 units that were proposed. And again, through the community, a lot of opposition. I believe it was not supported at council, but it went to the OMB and was supported through the OMB. So that is now sitting there. You were aware of, even though you lived in the area, but you were aware that there was a lot of community opposition to that, correct?
All I can say to that is that I wasn't part of that committee, and it's probably because I didn't learn about it, but I'm glad that there was a lot of opposition
But again,
about it.
as there's community opposition to this one, there was also community opposition to the other. Whether or not it was a different community organization, generally the community was not supportive of that. And I'm going from my recollection because I was a community member back then.
You know better than me, Gary. I mean, obviously, you're the counselor, so I'm glad.
And and just if you're aware, and this came before us last year, so the owner, I think it was RioCan, came to us, and the north part of the application, where all the stores are, the smaller stores, they actually came to us, and they more or less said that they delayed indefinitely any development on that northern section. They still have the opportunity on that section, which is Good Life, to do a development at some time in the future, but they more or less told us through council that they've kind of delayed it indefinitely. So even though there's 1,000 units proposed and they could build, the chances of that happening in the future are, as I said, maybe in 20 years for a portion of it. Good Life, yeah, there's still that opportunity. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions? No, seeing none, thank you very much. And the next deputant is Maggie Casella. Ms. Casella, thank you. And you have
Hi, how are you? Excuse me, before you start the clock, I just have to put my thing on presenter view so you can't see my notes. Hi, thank you. First of all, I had no idea your jobs were this tantalizing, and you have my empathy. So my name is Maggie Casella. I live at Hill Crescent, south of the project at hand. I'd like to start by just referring to the recent Toronto Star article that says basically if you are fighting this stuff or on one side or the other of this stuff, you're either NIMBY or you're in the pocket of the developer. I like to think that we're all people here, neighbors, even you, Mr. Developer, and that I hope that you aren't entrenched in that thought, because for me this isn't about NIMBY. I have water on the brain, and you'll see why. I will say just to the Goldberg Group woman that they worked with staff, they didn't work with us. Honestly, we went to that first community meeting hoping that we would get cooperation, and I feel like we didn't. So our concerns are not just height. I would say the planner's report is a subjective take, and that is incorrect, okay? We care about water and flooding, traffic safety, density, the fiscal health of this developer, and height. There are high water tables, underground streams. Flooding in our neighborhood already exists. I'm south of this. I'm on a secondary bluff. Many of my neighbors' yards are flooded. So the building is watertight. When we asked about what that means, even Tom, you said, hey, it's great, but we don't really know what watertight, the effect it will have. I want to know where the water's going when it goes around that building. On Muir Drive, look at me, I can't even do my, and you know what, I do this for a living. So on Muir Drive, at least 4 new build rent-out houses have had very big water issues. I'm not sure if they actually hit the water table when they dug, but they hit something. And after construction, resulting in flooding and builders having to redig and remediate after the construction was complete. This is a backyard on Muir Drive just after rain. So we are on an, if I could pull out a 1947 map, but you'd laugh at me, where it shows 2 streams underneath. You all know when you start moving things around, water moves around. I understand you can't guarantee what's going to happen, but there's a flood study being done in the area in a few months. And my feeling is like, okay, if this is not going to cause a whole what poop ton of water problems, I want to know that. And I would like to delay the decision on the application until that is complete. We had 2 community meetings, 2 chances to work with the developer. I hate to say this, some of my best friends are developers. I said it, I've outed myself. And I would have liked to work with them. The proposal at the first meeting, the notice said 8 stories. We got to the meeting, it was 10 stories. At that point, I feel like we should have dismissed the meeting and moved on, because we were looking at a 10-story thing, and even Ms. Goldberg Group could not speak to that and answer the questions. The second meeting was worse. The developer's consultant was unprepared, answered almost no questions of our concerns. It's nice they were working with Tom and David, but they didn't work with us. The proposal was for 9 stories. Right now, there's an error in the planning report where they list the sites that says 8. There was never an effort by Scholar to work with us. The opposite is true. We were looking for 4. Let's face it, it's let's make a deal, people. They came in with 8, was hoping maybe somewhere in between and we could address our concerns, but instead it went from 8 to 10, and now we're at 9. They said at the first meeting, the reason we're not going for 4 stories is we can't make enough money. Since when do we make these decisions based on what the developer can or can't make? And as I'm speaking about that, I'd like to point you to the fiscal health of this developer. I understand that you don't take that into consideration when you're looking at a site plan. You want to know if it's a proper site plan. But they did just have a recent bankruptcy on a condo site, very similar to this, where people were left out in the cold, and I'm not sure they have their money back yet, their deposits back. So the issues around traffic and safety are real. I think need more study. We found a flaw in their traffic report. It says 100% of their cars will go out on the service road. They will not. On-street parking will be affected. We have no sidewalks, kids walking to school. That's important. It's about, Mr. Deerenbaker, I can't say your name. I'm so sorry, Counselor. And through the chair, I say to you, this is not about, we have a qualification of a designation on the zoning. So the zoning is one thing. This is the only, if you look at density versus mass in this, I have 30 seconds, I will tell you that all of the other properties are designated mixed use. This is designated neighborhood. That is where we come into play, and we want to talk to you about the fact that the people who wrote the official plan were very smart. They looked at this particular piece of property. They saw the neighborhoods around it, and they said, no, leave this neighborhood. Good luck, you want to build 25 stories on that, but no, we're designating it neighborhood. That's what we think, that's where we come in, that's where we'd like to work with the developer on that. Thank you, I'm done. 5 minutes, boom, on the nose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you cannot. You cannot. No, you
No, you
cannot.
can't. We got to sit there and listen to you, sir.
And, no, sorry, sir. I'm sorry. It's not the forum. And questions of the deputant. Thank you. Questions? I know, I was just looking over there first. Sorry, Councillor Karagianis, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for looking to your right first. Through you.
That's on her left.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's why I said thank you. Through you to the deputant. You live in the community?
I do. I live south of this where the water flows.
Do you remember if there was, I mean, I heard my colleague saying that this predates us, I mean, the units above. Were you there when the other people were having the fight?
No, I was not. I wasn't even there. Apparently, there was some other stuff on this particular lot at one point where I wasn't there. I've been there 13 years.
I heard that the others went to the OMB. Were you aware of what happened at the OMB? Or?
Look, we're all aware of what happens with the OMB, which is why Kathleen Wynne keeps talking about how she's going to do something about the OMB, which is why John Tory talks about it.
I'm asking you specifically if you're aware of what happened at the site.
I was not. On which site? Across the street? North side?
If this, on the north side.
I was not aware. I was not notified. No.
So, are you?
I may not even have lived there. According to Councilor Crawford, I didn't live there.
Would you allow me, please, to put the questions? Thank you. Through the chair, to you. Are you afraid that if this was to go to the OMB, you might get a higher resolution that the nine stories, you might get 20?
Am I aware of that? Do you want to speak? I mean, it's like talking to a child when you ask us that question. I want to work with the developer to put something. I'm answering your question, sir. Through the chair, I'm answering your question. Why don't you let me answer your question? You asked me if I'm aware.
To finish my question.
So, Councillor Karagianis, you did finish asking the question. Hold on. You finished answering, asking the question, allow her to now answer the question, and she has the right to answer it in any fashion
Madam
that
Chair,
she
I will
chooses.
call tape on this, and I will challenge you, but anyways, this is neither here nor there. My question is, are you aware if this was to
Councillor
go...
Karygiannis, I am the chair. You finished asking your question.
I will call tape. Thank you, Madam Chair.
She has the right to answer the question, and she will.
Thank you, Counselor. Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, I'm aware of the OMB. We all are. The OMB is something that is constantly talked about in the papers, that is something that Premier Wynne talks about changing, that Mayor Tory talks about. I mean, I would argue that there's absolutely no due process when we go to the OMB. There is no right of appeal for any of us. I'm aware of the percentage of times that they side on the side of the developer. I'm a person who wanted to work with the developer and was disappointed at the community meetings, and I was disappointed by Scholar Group's consultants, specifically the woman who spoke today, whose name I don't know, who looked at me and mouthed, "I don't know," when I asked questions, who could not answer questions. So yeah, I'm aware of the risk we're taking going to the OMB. These people don't want to build a 25-story building. It's not in their wheelhouse. They want to build condos, make their money, and move on. And I don't disrespect that.
Councillor Karygiannis, she can finish her answer. I've told you that.
Madam Chair, I thank you for your intervention. I think that you cut me off in the first time. I will
No.
call tape, and I will bring it to you.
You can bring me anything that you want, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am the chair, and she is going to finish her answer.
Thank you. Now I feel so much pressure, but I will say I'm done. Thank you.
Any further questions of the deputant? Yes, Councillor Ainsley, I hope that you can be a little bit more civil.
Try my best. Could you clarify in your overhead, so you said that heights weren't your only concern, you had one about traffic?
Can I talk about water, or you want me to talk about traffic first?
Traffic first.
Okay, traffic.
Water's the next
Sure.
question.
I live on Hill, and it's a wonderful place to live. I moved from the beach. No, who moves from the beach? Scarborough Village is amazing. I moved here because of the neighborhood. However, during rush hour, you don't want to step out of your driveway onto Hill because I think through the graciousness of council, at one point we got stop signs. That was before my time. But people tend to race downhill at a very, very rapid rate, avoiding Kingston Road. They'd make a right either on Ravine or on Markham, come across Hill, zip around, and then go back out Scarborough Golf Club Road. If you look at the traffic report, also a very nice man, the traffic guy, he says 100% of the traffic will exit onto the service road. I don't think that's actually the case. We didn't get the questions answered, Councillor Ainsley, about how the traffic goes into and out of the building, where the driveway is. But if they come out, and you have to go out that way, to go out Kingston Road, you actually have to go out, go right, go down to Eglinton, make a U-turn, which is very difficult, and then come back around. So if it's me, I'm going to go out through the neighborhood and either go in either direction, uphill or whatever. Some people go down Bethune, and that's a traffic concern. So I would say that in his report, he says 100% will do this, but later on he says 82% will do that. And that's the part that concerns me.
Okay, so, so just to further elaborate, so there's a service road that basically runs from this building to Markham Road. It's parallel to Kingston Road.
Yes, that's correct.
And so you think that people will not use that service road, they'll go down Bethune or up and down Bethune and Hill Crescent?
Based on where the exit is presently on the, and I'll give them some props. They move their services around to the other side based on where they come out, of where the garage is. It's on Muir on the other, there, thanks. So the garage is on to the right of the pin. To go out to Kingston Road, if you want to go back south, you have to go right, make a U-turn, and go back up Kingston Road. My guess is during rush hour, you're not going to do that to avoid the traffic. You're going to come down Muir and go across Hill, which you can't see, which is what most people do, and I would do. I don't even take that way. It's faster for me to go that way as the crow flies, but I don't go that way during rush hour. I go uphill, across Markham, wait for the light, and then go on my way.
Right. But if you're living in this building, for example, Brynlor and Kingston Road, if you want to go downtown,
Correct.
you can take the service road, to Brynlor and turn left and go downtown to work on Brynlor.
Yep, you
Off
could
of
do that.
Brynlor.
Yeah, you're correct. You're right.
And then if you don't want to do that, if you don't feel that safe and you want a light, you can drive another 30 seconds, sorry, it's not on this map, at that service road and go out at Markham Road, correct?
You could, the service road takes you right to Markham Road, it does. But I would argue that based on where the garage is, to the right of the thing, you're going to go out right on Muir and go around Bethune.
Okay. And then, so the other concern that you had, so there's a stormwater plan for this building, and you're still concerned about
Yeah,
the
I'm really
stormwater,
concerned.
or you're concerned about underwater streams that are prevalent throughout the area?
Okay, sorry, and through the chair to you, yes. A lot of us on Hill and in the area are concerned about water. Again, if we had that addressed, if we knew where the water, right now, there are so many places that have flooded, Councilor Ainsley, that it's like, I don't even have a count. Every new construction north of Hill has hit a table. There's a bunch of houses on Heathfield. There's still water in one basement. It's constant. My concern is obviously they go down, and we don't know what they hit. And again, I'm not stupid. I know that we divert water all the time, but there's going to be a flood study in a few months. So what's the rush? They waited this long. Maybe we could see the flood study and then they could work with the flood study to ensure that we don't end up in a situation where everything's flooded because there's been a giant hole dug and a whole bunch of stuff's been moved around.
Okay, and I understand Councillor Crawford or the cities had 3 meetings. Was this not raised
two.
at 2 meetings?
Yeah, 2.
This was not raised at either one of those meetings?
They said they did a water study, but no, the flooding was raised as far as, it was a cacophony of it was a mess, honestly, Councilor Ainsley.
Last question, sorry.
Okay.
And any other questions? No, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you all, councilors.
And next deputant is Franco Agostinas.
Well, it's not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. I know you're all politicians, and I'm not. I'm very simple, not very many questions. I live on the service road in Brynlor. I can spit and kick a ball to where the car wash is, which the company there applied to build a condo. Fine and dandy. We raised over 1,000 signatures, blah, blah, from the people that live in that area, including me, my house. We don't want it. Never mind the 6th floor, 9th floor, 10th floor, 4th floor. Forget about it. That's why we got the signature. Not because of difference in height, because we don't want a period. I have nothing against people trying to make $1. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes there are certain things that they are not right. And if the people vote for something, count for something, I think it counts. And after I hear all these people talking, including most of you here, beside this and that, there is one thing. Only the lady that spoke before me started mentioning the water. On the second protest that we had right on Kingston Road, right by the car wash, in the afternoon, neighbor of mine came out with a map bigger than your desk, in black and white, taken by an aeroplane with X-ray camera. And we can see the river, which also go back towards my backyard. We can see the river under there. Now, Madam, you see the gap between your desk and the gentleman next to you? You see the gap there? Okay, that is the river. Behind you is a, Scarborough Golf Club. In front here is Markham Road. The place where they build it, it's right between your 2 desks. Now, if I go and put a broom in the middle there, the water is going to hit the broom and it's going to go like this. And what happened to our neighborhood that is already in trouble because you cannot beat nature. You can't. Eventually, it's going to go through, and I feel sorry for the people. Now, in the wintertime, when we get more than that much snow, which in Toronto is a disaster, the snowplow come, they clean the road. Here, Crescent, is always well done, but you go through the other street. You got to walk in the middle. The only street that have a sidewalk is mine, the service road. All the street that the kids go to school, because there is a school there is no sidewalk. In the winter time, you got to walk in the middle. I walk the dog 3 times a day. Sorry, Nico, I'm late, but I'll catch you later. and there is safety, because when it increases people, take the 1,000 units across the street. There got to be kids that go to that school. They got to cross the street. They walk around the street. Our kids that live in our neighborhood, they are walking on the road. There is no sidewalk. Only my street has it. And I'm there for almost 20 years. So I got no much more to say to you. We just don't want it. We are afraid that it's going to create problems, especially with the river that right underneath, the traffic, and kids. Someone is going to get hit one of these days. I hope to God that never happen. But you increase people. And they are always in a hurry. I don't know why they don't get up 5 minutes earlier. But things happen, and I don't like it to see it happen. I am a father. Now, I'm finished. Who wants to ask me a question?
I know.
Well,
questions?
ladies and gentlemen,
thank you.
Have a good lunch. I set my piece. I lost 5 pounds, but God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And next deputant is Janice DaCosta. Ms. DaCosta, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Janice DaCosta, and while I do not expect there to be any name recognition, I am hopeful that you, at the very least, remember the 6-page letter I mailed on August the 3rd on the subject of 3655 Kingston Road and our need for responsible building. It does not appear that the city has done its due diligence with regards to flooding in our area. Should the rezoning of this building pass, we, the members of the SVCA, we will be compelled to distribute the following notice of concern to residents in the area, leaving the City of Toronto liable. The notice of concern reads as follows: potential flooding and water management issues. This notice is being forwarded to the City of Toronto in respect of the properties in the vicinity of the proposed building development to be located on 3655 Kingston Road, Scarborough, Ontario, M1M 1S2. This proposed development would be located where possible underground streams exist. Underground water levels are consistently high throughout this area. In the case of any flooding or water management issues affecting the residents in this vicinity, during or after the construction of this development, this notice would be used as a record that the city had full knowledge of this risk prior to the approval of this development. This building development would result in substantial underground water deviation, given its depth and watertight construction. As taxpayers to the City of Toronto, it is our expectation that the city would assume financial responsibility for any form of damage resultant from water issues in our properties. Signed, addressed, and dated. But that is not all. Documentation from maps have revealed that streams flowed in our area, and 2 of them throughout the current car wash site. Today, some of those streams are still underground, causing flooding to the majority of the homes in our neighborhood at one time or another. Even during a heavy rain, it is typical to see our backyards turn into swamps as underground streams rise. Insurance companies target our area as high risk for flooding. When bringing this matter to Tom's attention, his reply was that the building was going to be constructed watertight, no weeping tiles or sump pump. That is potentially great news for the condo, but how about the rest of the community? He still could not answer how this building could affect the flow of streams underneath and how the rerouting of the streams could affect neighboring homes. As well, Tom acknowledged that watertight buildings is a very new method that does not have enough history to determine negative impacts. The city's current flood management plan will not study our area until beyond 2018. This is obviously unacceptable as it pertains to this development moving forward without the benefit of the knowledge gained through this study. At the very least, this project should be delayed until a proper study has been done and the conclusions viewed by you all. There is no need to rush this project. The Water Conservation Authority would not respond to our requests for their involvement. Their protocol requires the city to request this review. Despite all this knowledge, my question to you, is the city willing to accept the financial, emotional, and perhaps fatal responsibility for flooding and sinkholes resulting from the building of the proposed condos? What also surprises me after reading the staff report is that the only one thing that Tom could come up with in this report from a community concern standpoint was the view. There was no mention of our concerns about the flooding in our area, environmental concerns like the high levels of petroleum hydrocarbons that is demanding a second ESA report, safety, especially for those children walking to and from school, and very little about traffic. Another traffic and safety concern comes from Tedesco's engineering-owned research. According to addendum exhibit number 3B, which illustrates current PM volumes and movement of traffic, it indicates at least 82% of the traffic from the townhomes that exit left on Muir Drive continue their journey through the neighborhood along Bethune Boulevard. Incredibly, Tedesco is forecasting 100% of the vehicles that exit right onto Muir Drive from the proposed condo will continue their journey along the service road, thereby not affecting the community. When pressing the engineer for an explanation at our last public meeting, he was unable to defend himself.
Sorry, thank you. That's the end. It's after the 5 minutes, but somebody may ask you a question, and Councillor Ainsley will.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in this morning, or soon this afternoon now. Can you clarify for me, because both yourselves and the previous deputant mentioned that there was going to be a flood study done in the area, and both, I think Councillor Crawford and I were both trying to understand what you're referring to.
It's my understanding that the city has undertaken to do a water study for our area in 2018, but all we're asking is for it to be escalated forward.
Okay, because the city does we have a wet weather flow master plan that's being implemented across the city, and my understanding of that is the area, Guildwood, including around Muir, isn't going to be looked at until 2024. So I'm not sure if that's the same one that somebody's told you it's going to be done in 2018.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And then at the end of your presentation, you mentioned about concerns with children walking in the area,
That is
specifically
correct.
on Bethune?
There are schools in the area. We've got, I don't know the name of the school, but I know it's behind the condo. I know there's a lot of children that walk to school, so that would be a concern. I know that buses too, there's children being dropped off at the schools. And it is a high traffic for children. It is a neighborhood with young families.
Right, and I guess from my perspective, as somebody that's lived in the area their entire life, and I'm very familiar with the area, our family doctor used to be at Markham and Kingston Road, but I would think if you're in this building, that most residents, if you want access to local amenities, shopping or anything like that, are going to go out on the service road and onto Kingston Road. And that's the perspective our traffic operations staff took as well when they determined the traffic flow would be in the area.
All I can speak is of Kingston Road. I know at peak hours, as many as 2,000 cars go east of Kingston Road, and that adds to the problem.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the next person to speak is Susan Grattan.
I think I need a booster seat.
Oh, thank you very
Please
much.
excuse me if I'm a little bit nervous.
okay.
I wasn't intending on speaking today, but I feel a little bit outnumbered. My name is Suzanne Grattan. I'm a retiree. I'm 70 years old. I've lived in my home for 35 years, albeit Unionville, and it's time to move. And I did a lot of research in deciding where I wanted to move to. I knew it was a condo. I grew up in Oakville on the lake. I decided I wanted to be by the lake. I have a dog. This is a pet-friendly condominium, so I was looking forward to walking my dog, to riding my bike, to walking, and to hopefully meeting some new friends. Anyway, I really want this building to be built, and I would like it to be built before I'm 90. And I think it's going to be an asset. I think it's a beautiful building. I think that the developer has done a wonderful job. I'm very excited about the unit that I have purchased. And I just want to be part of this community. And I am dismayed at the amount of negativity. I mean, I know there's points being made, but I think that it's like an uprising or something, and very negative. I wish perhaps, I don't know who they think is going to move into this building. I would assume it's a lot of people who are perhaps in my category or age and downsizing, and that makes sense to me. I really want to move into it. I don't think it's going to be a detriment, and I hope it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And questions of the deputant? Nope, seeing none. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to actually move a motion. And this is that Scarborough Community Council extend the meeting past 12:30, the lunch recess, in order to complete consideration of the remaining items. So it would be this item and an item that Councillor Thompson held, and also for the SC 2413 application to remove a private tree.
Speaker?
Yes.
I have a planning meeting scheduled at 12:30, so I'll be attending to that. There's a number of people who are coming to that meeting. I'm prepared to defer my items that are left so that members can just deal with this, so
Okay.
as to not delay and so on. They're fine. I can deal with them at the next council meeting.
Okay.
So this would be probably the only issue that's left for the balance of the day. Is
That's
that correct?
right.
Yeah.
So you wish
I
to
could do that,
defer?
and if I could just defer those items.
And, hold on, just wait 1 second. Yeah, that's what we're going to do, and I can see Councillor Hart wanted to say something as well, but
Madam Chair, you mentioned 2413, that's actually my item, Ward 44.
yes. Yes, so that one we're going to deal with. We're going to work right through lunch to finish this item and that item, and then what we'll do is Councillor Thompson has noted that he will defer his
My meeting
item.
will take about an hour. It was scheduled for the lunch, so if it is completed, but I'm fine just to defer that. I'm assuming that the balance of this discussion will not take 1 hour. Do you think it will? Because I can come back after, Madam Speaker.
We have 3 speakers left, and then it will go to planning, to staff, and then it will go to speakers, and then it will go to Councillor Hart's.
Okay, so, well, we just leave it as is then, but I do have to leave to attend to this
And
meeting
if
at 12:30.
So if you're away and we do finish, I'll defer it on your behalf.
Yes, exactly.
Is that
That'd be fine.
okay? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. And so with that motion, and that means that we're going to work right into lunch. Are all those in favor?
Of working through lunch?
Yes. Yeah, and opposed, and that carries. Thank you. So we'll continue. And so, sorry. That's right. And so Councillor Thompson votes in opposition, and it still carries. But I'll keep you abreast. And the next speaker that we have is Pamela Georgopoulos. Hi, Mr. Georgopoulos. Thank you so much. And you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. I, too, had not intended to be speaking today, and nor was I meant to be here today. However, I felt it was important to come and support my community. I've lost someone very close to me in the last 4 days, my cousin. And the reason I'm here is because no one mentioned this. There was a child that died literally meters away from my home because of speeding along the street. I sat and watched the ribbons tied to the posts, the flowers where he had passed away. No one mentions this. No one mentions how the traffic speeds down Hill Crescent. And I'm going to talk about that because I feel safety of our residents and safety of our children is the most important thing that needs to be addressed today. I agree with everything that my fellow neighbors have spoken about today. I agree that we have a problem with water issues. And as councillors, you are very well aware that we have a stormwater management plan, and you are very well aware that we have had serious flooding issues in several areas of the city, including Scarborough. Our storm of 2006, our storm of 2011, over 2,500 homes flooding every single time, residents who have lost insurance on their properties because of multiple flooding, and we have residents on Muir Avenue who have had multiple flooding. So please do not ignore this, but this is not what I'm here to speak to you about right now. I want to make a couple of things. I want to clarify a few things, if you will allow me. First of all, this area south of Kingston Road is zoned neighborhood. The area north of Kingston Road, where you see your Metro and your Good Life Fitness, is not zoned neighborhood. Nor will the OMB allow a 25-story building south of Kingston Road because it is zoned neighborhood. Janice Robinson, the land use planner of the developer, stated that this site is 9 stories. This site is not 9 stories. This building is not a 9-story building. Take a look at your drawings, please. This is a 10-story building. It has a rooftop terrace on top. It's enclosed, partially enclosed. It has its maintenance and its equipment on top, also enclosed. This is a 10-story building. The city's definition of large, medium, and small buildings is very clear. Please look at your notes, councillors. This is a large building for our neighborhood. A 10-story building is a large building. You said that there are no traffic issues, yet traffic issues have escalated in the last several years. Police are there several times a week because of the traffic issues. I personally sat outside and counted 88 cars in a 12-minute period around 8:30 in the morning. When our children are going to school, this is a serious concern, when we have no sidewalks in this neighborhood. Janice also mentioned that she worked closely with city planning, and yet at a meeting that I attended where one of the representatives from the city planning department was there, I will not mention his name. You know who he is if you wish to find out. He was a very decent man. He admitted that he himself, even after he had signed off on reports, had not personally visited the site, nor had he personally walked through our neighborhood. I would welcome you and be happy to take you through a walk through our neighborhood so you can truly understand what we're talking about here. In 2013, City Council adopted a tall building design guidelines. Tall buildings, this means it's taller than the width of adjacent streets. Tall buildings are desirable in the right places. This building is taller than the width of the adjacent street. It does not comply. Tall buildings are desirable in the right places, but they don't belong everywhere, and this certainly does not belong in our neighborhood. I want to go back to safety because I don't want to miss this opportunity. I'll use the Danforth and Bloor as an example because you can all relate to where Bloor Avenue is and where it meets the Danforth. Imagine that now being Hill Crescent and no sidewalks anywhere. This is what we're talking about. This proposed building is accessed by Muir Avenue. It's a very small street which leads to Hill Crescent. Hill Crescent changes names. It's still the same street. It's one straight street. It turns to Bellhaven Ravine Drive to Bellamy. This is almost like, you can take a look at your map. It's a shortcut. People will take that shortcut from Eglinton and Kingston Road to get to Kingston Road and Bellamy. We have 3 schools. this is my most important concern. 3 schools, Laurier High School, GP Mackey, and Bliss Carmen, and all these children walk along these streets. There are no sidewalks anywhere so they can get to and from school. All ages from K to grade 12 walk along these streets to access their schools every day with no sidewalks. You allowing a building and 100 more cars. You're building 99 units. In your own city plans, 2.5 residents per apartment unit is what you have described. 100 more cars up and down that street.
Sorry.
It's about safety.
And somebody may
Thank you.
ask you a question. And question of the deputant, Councillor DeBaremaker.
Great. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today. And I, like you, I think am a big advocate of sidewalks to make it safer for kids, for children going to school.
We have residents also that walk, if you go there in the morning and in the evenings, our residents are walking along these streets, taking their morning and afternoon and evening walks. So it's everyone, it's children and residents of our community. Thank you.
Agree with you completely, and I also know Hill Crescent. Now, my guess is if we propose sidewalks along Hill Crescent, most of the residents who own those houses would object to them. Correct? So you're talking about safety today, so I support your initiative for safety. Don't you think the best thing we could do to protect all those people all the time is put sidewalks on Hill Crescent?
If
So
you like.
I'll move that motion today.
We're here to talk about the building, Counselor.
but-
We can deal with your motion during another time, and I'm sure my residents and my neighbors would be happy to come and attend and express their concern. But I can almost assure you that if it came down to losing the life of another child, I don't think the residents, I will not speak for the residents, I will speak for myself. I'm not opposed to sidewalks.
Okay.
Personally, but I do not have the right to speak for my neighbors. I hope you can appreciate that.
No, but you and I would.
I was the one, though, that has to sit and drive by the flowers and the ribbons. Safety is extremely important to me, sir. I'm sure, do you have children?
No, I don't. But I know children. I love them.
I'm sure you do.
So then you and I are in agreement that you and I would support sidewalks on Hill Crescent. We can't speak for all the
I
neighbors.
can't speak for anyone else.
But you personally and I personally, we both support sidewalks on Hill Crescent and all the other little streets there, because going back with Chine Drive, there were residents there who objected to sidewalks. And we put them in for the safety of the children and other people. So you would agree that you and I, one, we should reject this application in order to protect children, and two, we should put sidewalks in all the local streets to protect children. You and I would be in agreement on that, if that's what we want to do.
First and foremost, today's issue is regarding 3655 Kingston Road and where it's located and the neighborhood being designated as neighborhood. I am opposed to that. I want to make one thing clear, however. I'm not opposed to the development, and neither are the over 1,000 signatures. I spoke to residents. No one is opposed to development. We all support a 4-story or less development in the neighborhood. It's the size of that development that we are opposed to.
Okay.
And yes, I do support along at least one side of Hill Crescent that there should be sidewalks.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? And Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the deputy, and thank you for coming and good afternoon. I believe the proposal is for 99 units.
This is what we have been told, yes? That's correct.
Which will add roughly about 100 cars to your neighborhood.
I'm sorry?
Which would add roughly about 100 cars to your neighborhood.
It will add 100 cars for a neighborhood, but you also have to take into consideration that it will add more visitors to visit those who live in the neighborhood in that particular location.
If this was to be a 4-story stacked townhomes, would you be supportive of it?
Yes, I would.
How many units do you think that you can put into the 0.7 acres of stacked townhomes? How many?
It's a very small lot. I'm quite surprised that the city has, I don't know if the city is supporting it, but a few people are supporting it. 0.7 acres, is that correct, is the size of the lot? My home is 0.7 acres, sir.
The question to the chair was, how many stacked townhomes would you accept for the city to allow to happen there?
Well, whatever the zoning allows, I think certainly 30 would seem very reasonable to me.
Would you think it's 30, 40?
I'm sorry, there's noise in the background, I can't hear what you're saying.
It's 30, 40, 50?
30 to 40, I'm sure would be
That
reasonable.
would add an extra 40 or 50 cars in.
It would add an extra 60 cars, sir. And it's not just that it would add what if we're doing math, we are trying to explain to you that we're supporting what the neighborhood is zoned for, which is 4 stories or less.
Through the chair.
And if you allow this to proceed, here's my concern as an engineer, and as an engineer, let me answer your question. When you do not respect the current designation of neighborhood and you allow this one to continue.
Sorry, it's getting back and forth again. So what I'm going to do, Councillor Karygiannis, just let her answer the question, and then you will. What's your, okay, then repeat your question. Allow him to repeat his.
Allow me please to finish my question. So instead of 99 or 100 cars, when you build 45 or 50 stacked townhomes, the difference will be about 50 cars, 45 to 50 cars. Would I be incorrect?
If that's your question, and if you're doing the math, the difference is between 50 and 60 cars. 60 cars if you're going to be building 40 units. And if you're building 40 units, no one is opposed because you're respecting the designation of the neighborhood. The moment, and as you know this, that you disrespect the designation of a neighborhood and you allow what we consider a large building, you're going to, you have now, there's a precedent has been set. You have now opened it up to many more of these large buildings. The moment we allow one, we have opened it up to more, and we cannot ignore this, especially when our lot sizes are 0.7, they're 0.7 acres. My home is more, it's 0.7 acres. I could essentially
Councillor
have a building
Karygiannis, she
beside
has
me
the right
that's
to
10
finish.
stories high. I cannot ignore that if you disrespect what you have put in place to protect our city neighborhoods, you have set a precedent moving forward to allow this to continue.
Madam, I don't want to sound antagonistic. My question was very simple, the difference of number of cars.
If you're talking mathematics, you're right. If you take 40 away from 100, you're left with
That's
60.
all I wanted to
That's
know.
fine, sir.
So my other question is, do you think that the 40 extra cars will make a difference in the neighborhood? Obviously not. Thank you.
I'm trying to collect my thoughts, sir. What will make a difference in the neighborhood is what's to come when you allow this precedent to be set. It's not 40 cars anymore, sir. It becomes hundreds of cars. You've missed my main point, which is this main street has no sidewalks on either side. These children walk to and from school now, every day, not just one school, which is directly behind this building. We are talking about a junior school, a middle school, and a high school, all using this main artery. It's like saying, Bloor turns into Danforth, and that's the shortest cut route to go to all 3 of these schools, so these children take it because they're not going to do the Pythagorean theorem of walking along Kingston Road and making their route twice as long. This is what this is about, and respecting what we have put in place for our neighborhood, what you put in place for the neighborhood.
Okay, sorry, thank you, because there's another 2 minutes before, and so the time's up. And any other questions of the deputant? Councillor Ainsley.
Sorry, can you just clarify for me? Sorry, do you live on Hill Crescent?
I do.
You're on the north side?
I live on the south side.
Okay, so I represent the south side. I've never had anybody advocating for sidewalks on the south side of Hill Crescent.
I didn't come here today to advocate for sidewalks, Councillor Ainsley. I came here today to advocate for the safety of my neighborhood, for our residents and our children. My concern due to the basement flooding issues, which you're very well, as councillors aware of, the city, has combined sewer systems in place. I think most of you knew that. And that we have had several basement flooding issues with some very tragic results, with sofas floating in people's basements full of sewage. I personally attended these homes trying to find solutions for these neighbors and these neighborhoods across your entire city. You've done a great job at trying to implement downspout disconnection, making mandatory programs that you have also eliminated. However, we have some very serious issues. Today's concern is, if you want to talk sidewalks, we can talk about that. I did send you a letter about my concerns. I don't know if you had an opportunity to read it, but we talked. You've been to my home. You probably don't recognize me. We had talked about my concerns then, too. So when you were lobbying for your position in the last election,
Right, so what I was asking about, though.
I will support a sidewalk along that road for children. You can contact me if you want to talk about it some more, but today, I'm talking about something far greater than that. You allow a building that is not zoned to be in that neighborhood south of Kingston Road. It can cross the street and go over. No one is opposed to that either. But the moment you allow it, when you have houses, townhouses, immediately beside and behind this building, which will be accessing Neil Drive along Hill Crescent, Ravine Drive, to do the shortcuts, which people want to do. It saves a lot of time. I can understand why they want to do it. But as a parent, I worry about my children, and I worry about my neighbors' children. I worry about not wanting to see another ribbon on my street. That's my concern. And when you allow a building that is not zoned to be in a particular neighborhood, it's like somebody coming next door to your home. And because your neighbor happens to have a lot that's 0.7 acres, which, by the way, is not very big, but if you live on the Danforth, it's huge for some. The moment you allow one, you have now crucified that neighborhood because you can no longer say no to the others. The moment you allow your fences to be approved when they're, an inch or 2 inches higher than what you say, that's fine. But if you allowed one to go up that was 10, 20 feet high, if you allowed one 20-foot fence to go up, I'm sorry, it will be very difficult to challenge the next person who wants to come up and put that 20-foot fence. And this is what we're talking about in our neighborhood. Please come by and walk the streets with me so that you can understand why we're so concerned.
Okay, sorry, can you just clarify me? So you're saying somebody was killed on Hill Crescent recently by an automobile?
It was a few years ago.
Sorry?
It was a few years ago. It was approximately 5 years ago.
On Hill Crescent?
It was, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Shan.
Sorry, I just have one question.
Sorry, Ms. Papadopoulos, sorry.
Just trying to figure out through you, Madam Chair, the concept of neighborhood as explained by the deputant. So if a 9-floor building comes...
It's actually 10 stories. It's not 9.
10-story building comes into the neighborhood, would that be not part of the neighborhood from the definition of the neighbors?
Yes, that's correct. It's as though if you...
Why a building with 10 floors would not be part of a neighborhood?
Are you living in a condo? For me to help answer that question and help you visualize, do you live in a condo or do you live in a home?
I live in a home.
Okay. So it would be similar to where you live in your own subdivision, for example. I expect that your subdivision also has been designated neighborhood. So what that means is that if your neighbor, or let's say your neighbor 5 houses over, decided to sell their lot, and a developer came in and said, that lot's big enough that I could put up a 10-story building. I want to do that. You, however, may not want that in your neighborhood, and that's what it is. It's to protect the neighborhood that these designations are put in place. So they allow construction. They allow construction, and they'll designate up to 4 stories as acceptable, but anything more than that is not. And the other thing I want to mention, there's been a lot of beautification and development in our own neighborhood with some of these older cottages or bungalows are being purchased, and new homes are going up. Directly across the street from me, the developer that bought those homes wanted to put up a 3-story home. And he was not allowed to, because he was told in Scarborough, in that community, he could only do a 2-story home.
So just as
And yet, we didn't allow the three-story home, but we are now allowing a 10-story building. It's not acceptable.
So just as a clarification, the building from which a number of people have supported the petition and so on, which is a 20-floor building?
No, what they're proposing is a
No, the
10-story.
building that we talked about earlier.
Which buildings?
The building that we had deputants who had some concern about, view and so on. Is that building part of your neighborhood or not?
No, it's not.
It's not part of your neighborhood?
No, nothing to do with our neighborhood. They're north, so it's like saying, if you're on Bloor Street, north of Bloor is considered apartment buildings and south of Bloor is considered neighborhood. It's something like that.
Consider-
Yeah, it's designated neighborhood, no.
So it's,
Yes, sorry.
I want to understand the technical way in which you're defining neighborhood and how
Yeah.
a part of, across the street is not part of your neighborhood and this is part of the neighborhood.
No,
while
and in the
that
city's
particular
official-
building wants to have a say in your neighborhood, something being built in your neighborhood. So you
they
should
do
have
wanna-
people from other neighborhood telling what should be in this
Well,
neighborhood?
if you, for example, and I'm going to use Bloor because I think that's something that everyone knows where Bloor is, right? Just because you live north of Bloor or you live south of Bloor, you're still part of that community. But the area on the city's official plan that's north of Bloor, for example, let's assume that was like Kingston Road, that's not designated or zoned neighborhood, meaning 4 stories or less. So they are allowed, if you cross the street, they are allowed to build a 25-story if they wanted to, if the OMB allowed it, hotel or whatever. That is allowed. South of that, however, to protect that neighborhood, the city's official plan designated it as neighborhood, zone neighborhood, meaning no more than 4 stories. And it's the same as in your neighborhood, a hotel, unless councilors changed their minds and did, as we were meeting here today, decided to allow a developer to come in and build 25 stories, it's not allowed in your neighborhood where you live personally, because you're living in a neighborhood. And again, the same would apply to you. You probably could not build more than 4 stories. You could do a townhouse, you could do that sort of stuff, but not a big condo building or 25-story building, just to help you visualize what we're referring to today. And the people who are north.
Sorry, thank you, we
Oh, sorry,
got the
okay.
answer. Okay, so I'm going to allow for
Sorry,
one
Madam
more
Chair.
round.
Just on a point of privilege.
Yes.
So as the counselor for the area, the only traffic fatality in this area that I'm aware of occurred in 2009 when, as a result of street racing at 5 o'clock in the morning. Is this the same fatality that you're talking about?
I don't know what time the street racing was, sir. I don't know if it was street racing at all. All I know is that there was a child that died on our street. I know that we have no sidewalks on our street. I can only speak to what I know.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sure we can get that answer
thank you,
offline. And
Madam
then,
Chair.
so Councillor Demermaker, hopefully you're asking questions that haven't been asked
Yes,
before.
this is because Councillor Shan had asked some questions, and there was some comments about precedent and what's in your neighborhood. I've lived here in this area all my life. There's the Japanese Cultural Center and Seniors Home in your neighborhood on the south side of Kingston Road, down the street from this application, and I haven't counted it lately, but I'm assuming it's about 8 or 9 stories tall. And that was done 20 years ago. So do you consider the 8? Okay,
I'm
so-
sorry, the person who was here to speak to that is not here today.
But I'm asking.
It's not,
Do you consider the Japanese Cultural Center and Seniors Home part of your neighborhood?
I consider everything in my surrounding, my neighborhood.
Right.
But what's designated and zone neighborhood are 2 completely separate things. It sits completely separate and isolated away from any of that residential part of that community. You know where that is, since you say you're quite familiar with the area. You know behind it is also other commercial, buildings, parking lots, and so forth. It's not anywhere near the residential area, nor is it anywhere near where children walk to and from school and residents talk to and from school. This part in here? Okay, so over the past half-century, scattered high-rise apartment buildings were constructed in the midst of otherwise low-scale residential neighborhoods. The existing higher-scale apartments are recognized, but no new ones are permitted in areas designated as neighborhoods today because of your official plan.
Great, thank you, but my question to you is, do you consider those nice people living in the Japanese seniors building part of your neighborhood? Are they your neighbors? Do you like them?
Do I like them?
Yeah.
I like everybody.
Yes. So you
I consider what's in my neighborhood.
Right.
However, we put certain things in place as citizens of the city of Toronto to protect our city and our neighborhoods. And moving forward, we did this because we wanted to protect our city, we wanted to protect our homes and our neighborhoods in such a way, and that's why we have the official plan. That's why we have a stormwater management plan. This is why we put these things in place, to protect our neighborhoods. So moving forward, the mistakes of the past don't need to be carried forward, which is why we've put these plans in place to protect our neighborhoods.
The Japanese cultural center.
I definitely consider what's in my neighborhood today, my neighborhood.
Right. So
Everything that's in my neighborhood, I accept.
So that 8-story building on the south side of Kingston is okay?
It was there when I moved in.
Yes.
I understand that. It is also not anywhere in the path of people walking to and from school or going on their walks. And the residents that are on the north side of Kingston Road, who, by the way, signed petitions, and it's not because it was blocking their views. That's a very small component of this. These people signed petitions because their relief comes from our neighborhood. They cross Kingston Road and come into the designated neighborhood part of their neighborhood so that they can walk comfortably along the streets, enjoy the ravines, enjoy the trails, enjoy being able to walk through without any sidewalks. This is their relief. This is their haven. They may live north of Kingston Road, and the 300 out of 1,000 signed that had nothing to do with their views, 300 separate signatures because this is their
I
neighborhood.
was actually asking about the Japanese Cultural Center.
Yes, but I thought I should add
Yes,
that this is
you're
a very
supposed to be
important
answering
piece
my
too.
questions.
The Japanese and everyone there is our neighbors.
Okay, so we've gone back and forth, and now we're going to move on. Okay, thank you. And so the next deputant is Guido Panaccia. Thank you, Mr. Panaccia. Thank you for coming, and it's 5 minutes to speak.
Madam Chair, councilors, thank you for taking the time to have this proceeding today. I am the Senior Vice President for the developer of the project. I've been sitting here and sort of listening to all the comments, and you know, I do understand where the neighbors are coming from in a lot of ways, the impacts to their communities and so forth. There's a number of issues that I think just need to be clarified at this point and put to rest, because this development has been ongoing for several years now. First and foremost, there were comments made to respect to a previous developer, Scholar Developments. We do not recognize Scholar Developments. They have been removed from the project. We are Hazelton Developments that has taken over the development of this project. So I cannot speak to any previous incidents that the community may have had with the developers. We have been attempting very feverishly to work very strongly with the community, and we will continue to do that. You know, in terms of retorting or rebutting to each of these comments, at this point I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But there are a few key points which I think are important to be noted. Number one, this is an 8-story building, not a 9 or 10-story building. It is an 8-story building that has a mechanical penthouse which extends above that 8 stories. So I thought it was important to clarify that. On top of which, there were issues that related back to water. And again, there have been exhaustive studies done with this particular piece of property through the city staff, through our own independent consulting engineers, geotechnical engineers, and so forth. And the conclusions that have been cited in the report are as a result of, or an accumulation of, all the information that's been gathered over the past several years of this application being in force. There was also some concerns regarding traffic, and I think it's very important to understand that the traffic patterns in this immediate area have been studied, have been noted by not only city staff, but our own independent traffic consultant, which is on site or here today with us, and can happily answer any questions that anyone might have. But our concern as well in any development that we do is obviously safety being a key concern. Just for the record, there are sidewalks around the complete perimeter of this building that connect into Kingston Road and connect into the various side streets that adjoin and abut the development. We have no issue with working with the community, but we also understand that, you know, there's been some sort of a negative movement towards this development from day one, and I cannot speak to the previous regime that was here, but we are very much interested, and as you've obviously heard from a couple of residents that have voiced their opinion, that the development is very much desired in the neighborhood by many others. It is very much neighborhood friendly. In fact, I've looked through the records in the past, and the exterior facade of this building has been changed to be more community friendly. It was originally more of a sterile structure. We've now changed it to a brick facade or a brick view facade. And again, you know, the number of things that have been changed throughout this process have been countless, and we are very much interested in wanting to pursue this development and seeing it through and to the end. So I would ask Madam Chair and the Council to endorse this, the planning report, so that we could get on with the construction of this project as soon as possible.
Thank you. And questions of the deputant? Yep, Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, to you through the chair, the previous deputant mentioned something about the Japanese Cultural Center, and I believe it's Momiji Healthcare Society. They're located at 3555. What is your location?
We're located at 3655.
So that's roughly about 50 homes, correct?
Approximately.
How high is that Momiji Healthcare Society?
I believe, I haven't counted, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of 8 to 9 stories.
So this is similar to yours, your proposal.
Correct.
This is part of the community
Correct.
that exists. So you're actually not changing the structure of the community. You're just mirroring image what is 50 homes down.
Correct. In point of fact, the structure at the Japanese Cultural Center was built several years ago, but it's much more of a sterile exterior. We have, again, as I mentioned earlier, as a result of the community involvement, have changed that exterior to a brick, which...
The structure of the Momiji Healthcare Society be something similar to the apartment buildings that are right across the street from you?
Correct.
And they're, how high are they?
The apartment across the street, I believe, is in approximately 20 stories.
And that's part of the neighborhood community, according to, I mean, what you want to build, and
Correct.
according to people that live there. The only difference is, if I'm incorrect, and you can correct me, is that your building would probably block the view of about 7 or 8 stories of the people across the street, and they won't be able to see the lake.
I believe that there's an 8%, based on the shadow study that was done on the building, there's an 8% effect rate on the view.
Okay, so out of the 20 buildings, 8% would be 16 buildings, 16 condos.
Approximately.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Questions? Any more questions? No, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, sorry, we have one more question from Councillor Kelly.
Water is an issue that seems to have been brought up by many of the opponents of your initiative. What were the conclusions reached by the professional engineers that deal with water and ground have to say about that?
We are, the building is located obviously at the corner of Eglinton and Kingston Road, and there are some water table issues which have been addressed by means of dewatering, which in fact, if the community is so concerned about water, this development will not create more water problems. In fact, it will diminish water issues, because as the building gets excavated and dug, there is an ongoing dewatering system that will be applied to the excavation of the building until such time that the structure of the building has been completed. That'll be approximately 18 to 22 months. So we are actually taking on any water, any subsurface water that's in that general vicinity and pumping it into the system, which we have done extensive studies, and the city has done extensive studies to deal with and to approve, that will in fact make the water problems in the general vicinity better rather than worse.
And where will that water go?
That will go, it will be timed and will go into the sewer system only at designated times and spaces that are allowed by the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And, yep, sorry, one more question as well. Sorry, sir.
Hi, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today. Did you look at building stacked townhouses on the site? Did you consider that as an option?
I cannot speak to that because I wasn't part of the previous developer or developer organization, but I do understand that there was some discussion around it, but I cannot speak to any direct involvement in that.
Right, but so since you've been on, I'll call it this file or this site, it's always been the 8-story building. And how long have you been involved with the site?
Approximately 3 months.
And how long have you been in the development industry or?
35 years.
Okay, so given your 3.5 decades of experience on a site
You
like
had to
thi-
say that, didn't you?
Given that short experience, the small time frame you've been in the field.
I'm kidding.
What would your estimate be if you built stacked townhouses there? Because I've got stacked townhouses along Eglinton Avenue, and I can guarantee you I don't think these residents would like them. But if you built stacked townhouses, like I have along Eglinton Avenue, what would the yield be, roughly?
What would the yield be?
Yeah, how many units would you build on that site, roughly, if you built stacked townhouses?
In order for it to make any sense, it would have to be north of 50. In other words, more than 50.
Okay, and the parking when you build stacked townhouses is usually not underground parking?
Depends
Surface
on
level.
the community, but it could be underground, it could be, regular garages that surround the
Yeah.
townhomes.
I've got them and they're ugly. Please don't build any in my ward, but, okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No, seeing none. Okay, and there's one final deputant. And if there are any further deputants, you have to register with the clerk. It's Janice Robinson. You're done? Okay, great. Okay, so that is the end of deputations. If you've already spoken, then you cannot speak again. Thank you. And so what we will do is we're going to move to questions of staff. And so if staff would like to come up to present, and then we'll start with the questions. So we'll start with Jimmy, Councillor Karygiannis, we'll start with you.
I'm not sure if the local council will go before me.
Or do you want to go last?
Sure.
Okay. And, yeah, okay.
You might want to speak last, you get extra minutes. Madam Chair, I want to thank you through you to staff. What's the distance between 3555 and 3565, or 3665? I mean, it's 100 numbers. What is the physical difference in length? Is it